Hello, and welcome everybody to the newest episode of The Hole in the World, our live play of The Invisible Sun by Monty Cook Games. Uh, Once again, we are joined by our regular crew, or at least 3 out of 4 of our regular crew of vagabonds and scholars. Immediately to my right, past a perhaps guest frame joining us, we have our newest vislae, Twigg, played by. Hopper, did you mute yourself?
Would I mute myself? Would I do something like that?
It's not like that's ever happened before, Hopper.
It definitely hasn't happened on 50% of these frames.
Yeah, Hopper, once again, joining us in lieu of our good friend Marcy, who is away. Pardon me, Hopper is always joining us. Somebody else will be joining us later. So Hopper always joining us, playing Twigg, and tell us a little bit about Twigg, Hopper.
Twigg's a very slightly less confused than normal, angry punk, non-binary person.
Mm-hmm.
Apostate who eats knowledge like it's candy.
Oh, and you had a bit of a feast last time, so that's very exciting.
A little bit of a kind of, I don't know. It's like it was one of the beer luges, but it was like Golden Corral food, like that level of.
Yeah, definitely. I think the log books at the Acclamation Center definitely count for the Golden Corral. And also joining us again as part of the regular cast, playing Kyrrie.
Yeah, hi everyone, Marissa here. Kyrrie is an aromatic stoic of the Order of the Vance who understands the words, and she is a first assistant librarian at one of the 2 major research libraries on campus there.
Awesome. And also joining us as always, playing Maurice.
Hi, I'm Bill at Ghostspike. Maurice is a stalwart empath of the Order of Weavers who turns tales into reality. And he spends a lot of his time working at the Acclamation Center, helping people adjust from their lives in the gray to their new lives in the actuality, and has collected a second ward, it seems. After Gavriel, he now has Twigg, excuse me, to look after and make sure that they stay safe.
Absolutely. And yeah, we will also be joined by a 4th party a little bit later in the stream, and we'll find out a little bit more about that. But let's go ahead and do a bit of a recap of our last episode. Last time on The Hole in the World, our band of heroes or vagabonds or rogues, whatever you want to call them, finally reunited at the Castle of the Lie, a place not too far away from the center of Fartown, the segment of the Saturninian city that is really put aside exclusively for vislae, magic users of the actuality. And so it was there that they kind of got a chance to very briefly discuss some of the things that happened to them while they were voyaging together within the deeps of sleep. Of course, a lot of those things being very surreal, but also very mysterious, and yet somehow interconnected. And so they have taken it upon themselves as vislae and as people who are discovering this connection for the first time, and or maybe a second time, what all of that means. And so before they could actually kind of act on this mutual connection, they found themselves having to attend the Conclave of Iov, not just for the sake of Kyrrie's duties as an assistant librarian at the Institute, but also as a place where perhaps Twigg could find some medical attention because they quickly found their vision blurring and a bit of blood kind of streaming down their nose. And there seems to be no real kind of reason outside of what perhaps may have happened to Twigg and the Grey. And it was during a demonstration of Jauro's fictive form in which Grand Magus Jauro transformed himself into a fictional character from one of his daughter's short stories, that affliction or whatever had kind of taken hold of Twigg finally kind of forced Twigg into unconsciousness. And so we pick up where we left off. Jauro as Atla, this massive 8-foot-tall demigod woman from the stories, has just punched through what appears to be a solid block of granite. Kyrrie, you have applied the anonymous mark to yourself to make yourself a stranger to all of the people that you have recognized in the audience of the conclave, one of whom is your sister Allegra. But prior to that, you also noticed that your contemporary, or now contemporary, and perpetual rival, Geels, seemed to be possessed by some sort of weakness or kind of kind of sickness as they were watching the demonstration. And it is at this moment that all of you watch while all of the other vislae and the Vance the order of the Vance members in the audience in particular are giving a ferocious round of applause to Jauro for his demonstration.
Maurice is absolutely part of that. He is floored. His deal is turning tales into reality. He just saw Vance do it. He loves it. Standing ovation, not paying attention to anything else.
Absolutely. And I think at this point you guys are kind of watching in all these different kind of mental states, and that's when you see Twigg just lower and kind of fall prostrate in their chair. What do you do?
Well, I mean, I don't really have very much medical knowledge, but I mean, certainly some people here might. How much attention we want to call to ourselves, I think, is the open question. So I look at Maurice and I kind of try to catch his eye.
Yeah, what are you talking about? That was great, right?
It was, but look over there.
So Maurice is immediately bending down to tend to him. Is he breathing? What's going on? What are they?
But of course, it's quite crowded, I imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you feel shallow breaths against your hand as you bring it up to Twigg's nose. You kind of, I think you probably instinctually, your hand moves to the kind of wound in Twigg's chest, but kind of quickly move past it to recognize that, okay, check normal vital signs. Nothing is can be taken for granted when you are dealing with medical problems of vislae. So you feel the shallow breaths, but that blood is still pouring out of Twigg's nose. What do you do?
I'll try and do a little bit of basic first aid, kind of the pinch and lean thing, and then kind of look around, kind of do a double take at Kyrrie, because I don't quite recognize her, and say, we should get Twigg out of here. What's the fastest way to exit?
How are the other Vances reacting around us? Do they notice this has happened?
I think you guys are on either side of you are a couple of members of the Vance, but also on other side of you are just kind of what appear to be other kind of members of the public that have come to watch this display. In particular, the person next to you their hair seems to be alight with a green flame that kind of spirals up, and their eyes are also kind of burning like green embers under the lids. and they are looking very kind of not distressed for them, but kind of really like, I think it's more of like distressed for Twig, just kind of seeing the state of this audience goer. And I think there's kind of like moments of cogitation, and immediately that vislae puts their hand out to signal one of the Peresaad that's not too far away, that's been kind of like monitoring the demonstration so that it doesn't hurt anybody in the crowd.
I was going to say, do I know any one of my colleagues who would have more specialized medical knowledge, and do I see them within like shouting or tapping or, otherwise gesticulating range?
I think it's at this point that as you're kind of like looking around, and the audience is still clapping. At the same time, what ends up happening, you notice, is that there are kind of like everybody is moving to sit, and so it's going to be very hard to be unnoticed. But you do notice that there are not necessarily people that you recognize, but there are a number of Peresaad, one of which is kind of gesticulating towards Twig and is moving towards your aisle.
So Maurice looks, turns his head to find Gavriel and asks her to help. What does he say?
I think you see Gavriel next to you, and she kind of, I think her attention is completely drawn elsewhere. Her eyes seem to be looking at somebody or something kind of like appears to be leaving out of one side of the hall, and it's just her attention's completely wrapped.
Is she within distance? Kind of reach out to her?
Oh yeah, no, she's not far.
I'll try to tap her on the shoulder and say, we need to go. Please.
And I think Gavriel takes one look down and looks at you and looks very conflicted, and then says, I am very sorry, but I have to go. And she begins moving out of the aisle.
And Maurice, in this instant, in a bit of a panic, decides to going to kind of find a seam in the floor where he could shove it to try and make this some sort of like manhole escape through the floor situation where he can just drag Twig out of here.
Okay. So you begin. So why don't you actually give me a movement roll? Because you are going to be trying to drag somebody to safety.
So I'm going to spend a movement bene, and then I can pump it with sortilege.
Yeah, if you'd like to kind of make magical haste.
Absolutely.
Although I think you can only choose one or the other. Which do you want to do? Magical haste, I assume.
No, I'll do the movement.
Okay, cool.
I'll do the movement.
So add 1 to your bene, and then we'll see what happens.
8.
Okay, all right. So with an 8, and with that bene, that brings it up to a 9. And so you begin like pulling with surprising alacrity Twig through this crowd of people, and you're moving, very quickly, and you're trying to kind of like, I think what you're doing is you're finding there's not a lot of purchase. There's not really a seam to be had in this kind of aisle here. There's not even really any structural weaknesses, but what you've kind of accomplished is you've managed to pull. You've managed to kind of get low to the ground and begin pulling Twig with a lot of speed through the aisle. And there is of course like a murmur going through the vislae on the side of the aisle that you're kind of opposing. And they're just,
Maurice, excuse me.
My word. And so you are pulling, and that's when the Peresaad agent that pointed and gesticulated, said, "Hey, is everything okay? And they're trying to be quiet because the demonstration is still in progress. Is everything all right? Can we assist you?"
I think he needs some fresh air. Will you help me take him out, please?
Absolutely. Yes, of course. And what are you doing, Kyrrie?
So I've kept my eye on this situation, but I've also been trying to keep one eye on what's happening with Allegra, and making sure her attention is still kind of facing forward, and that she's not looking around to see what's happening. Because at the moment, my priority, regardless of what's just happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of still kind of maintaining.
So I look towards Maurice, and I make to follow him, but only at the expense of her not noticing.
Okay. So give me a movement roll as well. And this one, you're basically trying to move stealthily.
Okay. So I've got 2 movement. All right, that's a 7.
Okay. So I think what ends up happening is as you're kind of pulling, you're pulling Twigg out of the eye, or you're kind of like following suit with Maurice, rather. And what ends up happening is you're kind of keeping a very close eye and cautious like look at your sister. And your sister, it's almost kind of like she begins to start turning her head towards the disturbance. And then you see this figure, tall, very kind of broad, except translucent, and again, kind of this spectral form, leans over as if to kind of whisper something, and what you then see Allegra do is just kind of nod her head, look kind of knowingly back at this figure. So whatever you have done to kind of like safeguard your exodus has worked in tandem with the fact that her attention is more on her guest from the court of Nois than it is on kind of what's going on with the rest of the audience.
Excellent. So in that case, I will follow Maurice out and try to kind of help support Twigg as we're trying to get him out.
Absolutely. And I think there are about 3 or 4 Peresaad agents that are kind of like waiting in the wings, while the one that is assisting Maurice has his hand under the shoulder of Twigg, and has kind of helped brace him and kind of brace them and move them out of the aisle with you. And they've kind of gone off into a side chamber. And this you recognize is actually the main reception area for the demonstration. And already you see what look to be a number of thought forms that are engaged as laborers, essentially kind of like as waiters and servers. And already there are trays and platters of hors d'oeuvres, and many of them kind of varied depending on the needs of a varied kind of set of guests. Because clearly some of these guests are angels and demons, and some of the food looks to be still alive, like tiny little creatures. So these 3 agents are kind of waiting in the wings, and the first one is assisting Twigg, and Maurice comes up and says, "We need medical assistance. Anybody here?" And then one person kind of sees what's happening and raises his arm, says, "Hey, I can help. What's going on?" And this fellow just kind of moves very quickly to Twigg's side and is kind of assisting you. What are you? I was going to say, Kyrrie, I think you probably travel in similar circles. With the Peresaad, you've kind of seen people in passing, almost the same way you've seen Alma in passing. And I think this person you do recognize as a fellow named Marlowe.
Okay.
Yeah. And Marlowe has kind of approached you guys and said, "What's going on? What seems to be the nature of the emergency here?"
So Maurice says, kind of quietly and calmly, this this person has just recently returned to the actuality, and I believe that their injury is bleeding through somehow from the gray. It might be, more extensive than a simple, first aid check.
And then Marlowe kind of takes a look and again kind of does what you did and kind of puts a hand very quickly to the nose and says, well, your friend's still breathing. That's good. And then at one point takes his hand and basically raises Twigg's eyelids and takes a light that basically illuminates the tip of his finger and begins kind of like looking in kind of like a medical fashion at the whites of Twig's eyes. Okay, so your friend hasn't been to the changeries. Wait, and he starts undoing the shirt that Twig was wearing and just kind of like begins kind of cutting with his hands the shirt as he kind of sees what looks to be the edge of a set of bandages. And takes a look and says, your friend is wounded. Did you know this?
No. This might be from the gray. This might be a complication from the gray.
And, he takes a look. Okay, we need to get to someplace very quickly. Could you please follow me? And he kind of looks to the other Peresaad members and says, Thomas, or was it Isabella, could you please assist here? Follow me, please. And they begin ascending a set of stairs that are kind of very, very shallowly lifting off of the ground to the second floor of the Memorial Hall.
Maurice turns around. Has Duncan made it out of the main chamber? Did he follow?
Oh yeah, no, Duncan never leaves your side. So basically, I think that Duncan has a very kind of concerned look on his face, just kind of like because like any dog, regardless of thought, form status or not, it gets a very good reading on your emotions. And Duncan's kind of whimpering. Just
so,
very...
look down and back. Let's go, boy, and we'll follow the guard.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Kyrrie probably is up with Marlowe and Isabella as they're sort of leading the charge, and she's really interested in what they're going to do and where they're going to take him. So she's sort of asking him, are we going to the advanced laboratory? Where would you rather... What is your intention for having him examined?
Basically, Marlowe takes a look and says, well, essentially, we need to assess the state of the damage. We're trying our best not to move them too quickly, but the most important thing that we do is that we just figure out the nature of the malady. Isabella can help with the assisting diagnostic. Thomas, of course, very helpful with this, but at the same time, it's really, they're going to essentially be playing assistance to my medicine, if that makes sense.
Well,
Sorry, I think I lost you.
in the gray.
And Maurice interrupts and kind of breathing heavily from going up the stairs. Really appreciate your help, stranger. What was your name again?
My name is Marlowe Anvers. Guys,
No, he's looking straight at Kyrrie.
Hold on.
Like one of these.
Hold on, guys. OBS disconnected. 1 second.
Fuck.
Let's see. I think that we're still good. Drop frames, nothing. Yeah, apparently. 1 second. Yeah, Twitch decided to cack out on us, guys. 1 second.
Ugh.
Alright. Alright, 1 second. We're gonna start this again.
That's really solid. Hello, stranger.
Okay. And then we're gonna start streaming again. And I believe we should be live. Yeah. Okay. I think we're back. So, guys, sorry if you are rejoining us. We occasionally have technical difficulties with OBS and Twitch, and it looks like Twitch was momentarily disconnected. Thanks again if you are staying on. So, Kyrrie, just for the sake of the stream, could you repeat what you just asked Marlowe?
Right. So I had just asked Marlowe whether or not it would be prudent to bring him, Twigg, to somewhere where he would be close to written resources or reference material, and not just conduct a systems diagnosis, such as, for instance, Grey's Anatomy, something that Kyrrie knows is in the library, and she could go get it from as a relic of Shadow that she was, able to, or someone was able to acquire in the collection. So yeah, at this point, I believe Maurice, were interrupting and coming into the conversation.
Right, huffing and puffing, looking at Kyrrie and saying, "Thank you, kind stranger, for your help. What was your name again?"
And Marlowe Anvers, sir. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Marlowe. And you, young woman, what was your name?
Oh, it just sort of occurs to Kyrrie, that's right, I'm wearing this disguise to avoid my sister, so no one is actually going to know who I am. And in fact, this Marlowe is probably even wondering, what is this random person who's talking about reference materials and health sciences?
And
how is she qualified to make that assertion? So she's going to roll with it. She's going to go, my name is Alice Meadows. And
Miss Meadows, you've been so kind. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm very, very pleased to help. I'm a 4th degree Vance here.
Okay, all right. If you're a 4th degree Vance, or at least that's what you're telling Marlowe, I need you to. I believe this is an interaction roll. I need you to be sneaky.
All right, yeah, happy to do it. Okay, so I've got 3 qualia in interaction.
Okay.
And that's a 6.
All right. So, okay. I think that with a 6 plus, what was your venture again? It was just 1?
You mean my interaction?
Yeah. Your
I have
venture for your
3
challenge.
qualia in interaction.
Oh, so in this case, so you spent a bene, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, so that venture, unless you had any additional kind of points in interaction or kind of skills in it, that would be a total of 7. And I think the fellow kind of takes one kind of like look at you and realizes they don't recognize you, and it's probably because you travel in higher circles. And immediately it was just like, very well, Cantrell, we'll make sure to go ahead and let you, if you would like to find any additional resources that would be above board, please proceed. We will continue the diagnosis, if that's all right.
Excellent. Please do carry on.
And Maurice, just when you think they are done going up the stairs, they keep ascending. Yeah, and they kind of pull you off into a side room, which appears to be kind of like a smaller, kind of like lecture hall or a small classroom or laboratory. So, Kyrrie, I assume you're heading off.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think at this point, we are going to, I think that the 3 Peresaad agents and Maurice, carry Twigg into this small side classroom, oaken paneled, very kind of vibrant woods, and there's also what appear to be a number of paintings of esteemed Vancian instructors, and the very front of the classroom is just clad in what looks to be a wall-length chalkboard, and very much not unlike a more kind of classical university classroom. And at this point, they begin administering to Twigg. And speaking of Twigg, Your rest is fitful. There are flashes of images crossing your mind as you kind of reside in this unconsciousness, in this unconscious state. And I believe it is at this point that I shall turn a card. And the card we drew is, as soon as I open in a new window, the Enticing Jewel. Visions, swans, blades, and water. Greed, money, beauty, goals, success. The light at the end of the tunnel, the brass ring, the center of the target. The object of our desire lies before us in the form of the enticing jewel. We want it. We have to have it. It represents beauty, but the side of beauty that demands attention and probably possession. It is the beauty that can sometimes call to our darker natures. It brings out greed, ambition, and selfishness. All right. So,
DM, can you remind me exactly how the soup deck interacts with like our card family stuff?
yeah, essentially, it depends on kind of what this does. Is essentially if it's a kind of a face card, namely like something like an apprentice or a sovereign, it actually augments all of your actions. But in this case, what this does is it actually enhances magic of a particular sun, because it's not a face card. And in particular for the Enticing Jewel, the magic that it enhances is that of the invisible sun, that of truth, which feels appropriate. Because, Twig, at some point, you open your eyes and you find yourself in a massive, overgrown forest.
Am I lying down or standing up or?
You're lying in the middle of a grassy glade.
I guess. Well, that's weird. I mean, not really any weirder than all the other bullshit that's been happening to me lately, but that's weird. My first concern is definitely Twig is going to look around and see if there's anything or anybody nearby other than normal trees or wildlife.
So you take a look at the wildlife and the kind of the flora and the fauna surrounding you, and they are trees of every kind that you could possibly imagine. Banyan trees, oak trees, palm trees, and they all seem to be coexisting in this environment, which you know is impossible. This kind of like temperate glade is really something that's more suitable for like deciduous trees. And so you find yourself kind of really being struck by the fact that all of these trees are in one place. I mean, just the root systems alone, it would be impossible to see back in Detroit. At even like the biggest massive public park, the biggest arboretum, it pales. Yeah. And you hear kind of like the soft sounds of, you know, crickets and chirping insects, but they seem to be chirping, some of them in harmony, and others in kind of this really kind of almost like a melody. It's very tranquil until you look up and you see that the sky above you is roiling with red clouds, crimson, the color of blood. And the other thing you notice about the trees immediately, you know, having your kind of gardening expertise, you also notice that some of the trees have words written on them. Like, they encircle every bit of the bark.
Am I able to cast spells in this?
Absolutely.
I would use Scent of Magic.
Okay. Would you describe for our viewers what that spell does?
Yeah. So Scent of Magic, I believe it's a first level spell, and for a moment I'm able to smell both the presence and then when and the odor, the essence of the magic around me, and then that also enables me to identify it. What type of magic it is.
So as you, what is the level of that spell?
I believe it's a first level spell.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah. So why don't you actually?
You want me to read it straight off?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Make a.
Oh, it's a second level spell. I lied.
Perfect. So I want you to. I think you already, as a apostate, have a bonus to unorthodox schools of magic and understanding. So with your level 2 spell, I'd like you to make a. I believe that this would be a intellect roll. With a starting venture of 3, and you can apply Bene.
I will definitely apply an intellect Bene to that.
Okay, challenge is going to be 7, so beat a 4.
And I roll 2? Or no, because I'm just venture, so I just roll the 1.
Yeah.
Okay. I do not. That is a 2.
Okay. So, what I will say that you kind of gather, because even with that 2, you still have a 5. You gather that this is maybe not. It's kind of the feeling that you get is it's very similar to your time in the deeps of sleep, but there seems to be something unique about it. It seems. I think that you can't kind of put your finger on what kind of magic it is. Especially given how limited your understanding of it is so far. But you gather that similar forces are at work.
I think the real question is words on a tree, does that qualify as a book?
It's knowledge. It doesn't have to be a book, and that is exactly where we're about to go. I'm gonna eat some tree words.
Okay.
What's the closest? I'll wander to wherever the nearest oak is, and I will just kind of reach out and run my hand along its bark and just kind of feel it and try to read the words that are encircling that. Try to draw them in.
Absolutely.
Don't you want to read the words before you try to eat them, Logavor?
Nah, I like to live dangerously.
All right. And so you touch the tree, and you expect to leach the words out of it, and you don't. And instead, what ends up happening is light flashes in your consciousness as you hear the phrase repeated in your mind, written on the tree. And I believe that phrase, if I can find it, is, "If I cannot abide my own soul, how will any fight alongside me?" And as those words resound in your mind, you have a crystal clear image of what you understand is a memory. And you are carrying a very lovingly crafted pistol in your hand. You have what looks to be a large field jacket with many pockets, and you are dashing through what can only be a battlefield. And you see, as you cock your eye at something in the distance, it's basically like you're watching yourself from the third person. You see yourself cocking your eye at something in the distance and then firing the pistol. And the pistol seems to fire, this, massive purple light from its muzzle, from its barrel rather. And then just like that, you snap back out of it. And you now have access to your weapon skill.
Dope.
Can you repeat what happened after the purple light? Your audio cut out for me.
Sorry. Twigg now has access to their pistol weapon spell.
That's
weapon
it? Okay.
skill. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think after you touch the tree, you hear the roiling of the clouds above you. And we're going to cut there.
That's fucking ominous.
So, Kyrrie, where do you go?
Well, the only thing I think I can do to help Twigg is go to the library. That's the natural place that I would go. That's where I have just told the Peresaad that I'm going. But I'm kind of excited because having remembered that now people don't recognize me, I can kind of be whoever I want. I can kind of just tell people what I think should happen, and they should make it happen, which is exciting for me. So, to test that theory, I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to try to collect some resources that I think would be helpful to the investigation that's going on with Twigg. But I'm also taking this opportunity, I think, to kind of get away from the situation. It's sort of been a lot for me in the past, not too long a time. I've not only encountered Maurice, who I wasn't expecting to see and not entirely ready to see, but I've encountered my sister, who I definitely don't want to see. And then suddenly, this newly arrived vislae has collapsed at my feet, and I'm expected to kind of help with this, all in the middle of one of the most important academic conferences of the entire year, when I'm not supposed to be having to do anything but think about my work and my paper and my research and how that's interacting with my case for tenure and promotion. So I'm a little frustrated by this, but also really overwhelmed. And so one of the things that I want to do at this time, not only collect the resources that I think will be useful in terms of figuring out, how to stop the bleeding that's happening with Twigg, but I also just kind of want to decompress and breathe a little bit and pour myself a cup of tea and process.
All right. And I think you do that. And I would like you to actually make a perception roll.
Sure.
Challenge 4.
Okay. So I have 3 benign perception. I guess I'll use one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, 9. I didn't even need it.
Okay, perfect. So that, I believe, will count as a critical success in this case. So you hear, as you're making your tea, the sounds of footsteps in the library. Big, kind of clumsy ones. And I think that with a critical success, you kind of get the instinct to follow them. And you kind of understand exactly kind of where you're hearing them, about how far away they are.
Okay.
Do you follow that instinct?
100% I follow that instinct, especially since I know I'm currently not recognizable.
So as you are kind of walking into one of the main thoroughfares, you see that there is what looks to be a massive grimoire, what can only be a grimoire, a massive tome. And it is being carried by Geels very quickly out of the library.
None of this seems good. I'm going to follow him.
Okay.
But stealthily. I don't want to be noticed.
All right. I would like you to then go ahead and give me a movement roll.
Okay.
I think your challenge is going to be equal to his level. So I'm going to say that your challenge is 4.
All right. I could use a Bene.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to maybe save my Bene?
Up to you. That is the question.
It is the question. You know what? I'm going to risk it.
Okay.
6. Yes.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah, so you are... Yeah, go ahead.
Right, so I'm just going to follow Geels, and I'm going to maybe creep along the sides of the buildings where he's walking by, maybe one of those classic scenes where like he looks behind his shoulder and I like quickly duck into some topiary.
Yeah, and you do it in such a fashion that you don't kind of like end up like half sunk into the shrubbery or anything like that. You're just like, yeah, it's secret agent level kind of execution there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so he looks over his shoulder, expecting to see somebody. There's nobody there. It just keeps moving quickly. And it's right as he gets to kind of the main quadrangle of the campus that you see this kind of shaking of his head and kind of a snapping of his eyes open. And he looks down at the massive tome in his hands and just starts, while still carrying it, starts running towards the laboratories. In this case, he's going to the Lustrous lab of practical magical applications.
Okay. Do I recognize the Grimoire at all?
I would say, you know what? Why don't you make a magical lore, and if you'd like to apply hidden knowledge, you can also do that along with a bene if you prefer.
Well, I also have 1 skill in magical lore.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, if I did that with a bene, that's 2 to add to the challenge.
And I'd say also, yeah, if you wanted to add one of your finite hidden knowledge to the roll, you could do that too.
I think I'll hold off on the hidden knowledge for the moment.
Okay.
But that'll at least give me 2 to add. What's the challenge on it?
I would say this one is an 8. Maybe actually no. You know what? It's a 7.
Okay. Oh boy. Maybe I do want to add a hidden knowledge then.
Yeah.
Just because it seems a little high. All right. So that'll give me 3, which means I need a 4. 5.
All right. Nice. Okay. So, with a 5, what hidden knowledge do you bring to bear to understand what this book is?
Well, I think probably what makes the most sense is the number of hours that I've spent toiling in the library, checking books in and out of the collection, checking materials that aren't books in and out of the collection. I've come to know them in a very tactile way. So how these pieces of knowledge and magical materials occupy space, which doesn't always need to mean like the grooves of carving in the cover, or whether or not there's a rip here or a tear there, but it can often with books manifest that way. So I think probably this grimoire has been something I've shelved or reshelved or seen before in the past at the very least. And therefore that tactile memory, something that only a librarian would really be able to bring to that, given the amount of time they spend around the materials in the collection and how important it is to them to preserve and protect those materials. It's almost like caring for your child. You feel duty bound and honor bound to take care of them.
Absolutely. This is so recognizing it, in addition to that, with that tactility, you also recognize what appears to be a large lock on the book. And what you recognize, and it's kind of like, it's, what a physical metal lock interwoven with glyphs. You always remember touching these glyphs and having kind of a read off of, basically what these locks signify, which is these are grimoires of very powerful advances that preceded you, and who, in their own right, in this case, this is typically, you would have a lock on your grimoire if you were someone like a Grand Magus or a Supreme Magus. And so that's kind of, I think from a distance, that's what you get. You understand that this is a powerful Vance's grimoire. If you had a closer look, you could probably be certain of whose it is.
Okay.
And that's when you see Geels just take off with it towards the Lastra laboratory.
All right. I'm going to go after him, but I'm not going to be able to run quite as fast as him, given that I'm trying to still be stealthy.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so we're going to cut there. And we're going to rejoin Maurice in the side room. So you're in the side classroom, and Marlowe is kind of very quickly looking at the wound, and he undoes the bandages on Twigg's chest, at which point you see this very clean wound that just bleeds very lightly, but it seems to have been stopped by the bandages. And
what's the shape of the wound?
It's like a very large incision, roughly the length from sternum to bottom of the rib cage. Or I say bottom of the rib cage, top of the kind of the end of the sternum, so end of the breastbone. And, you know, being very careful, having Thomas and Isabella assist him, they part the flaps of the wound, and Marlowe takes a monocle out of his pocket, puts it onto his left eye, and with the light at the end of his finger, investigates the wound. And says, "I'm very sorry. I don't know how effective my treatment's going to be. This, vislae, their heart is not in their chest."
Excuse me?
It's, well, this is an unusual case, but sometimes we have found that there are vislae who essentially, they remove their heart and they put it elsewhere for safekeeping. And seeing it's this wound, while it seems very fresh, doesn't seem to have any deleterious effect on your friend. I have to assume that your friend had their heart removed.
Of course, right. I should have thought of that. Are you saying that this wound is not the cause of him fainting just now?
No, we suspected that might be the case, but that is certainly not the case. In fact, in order to take a deeper look, Isabella, would you do the honors? And at which point, Isabella, basically originally kind of holding the wound open, brings her hands to Twigg's head, and a pulse of green-colored magic seems to pass from her fingers to Twigg's temples. And you watch as literally Twigg becomes a large person-shaped shrub. Like an actual, like, large bush. And she says, "It looks worse than it is. This is for diagnostic purposes, I promise." And
do I recognize what kind of magic that is? Is that considered weird magic, the kind that I know about?
It's Vancian magic amplified, because she's having this kind of conversation. She realized that she's muttering to herself, and the way that when vislae casts spells, one of the very interesting thing about that is the fact that vislae, you can read each other's emotions by how they cast their spells. It's like, oh, he's casting angry, that sort of thing. And you understand that what she's doing is very professional. It's actually very clinical. So
the only thing that Maurice is really actively doing while watching these Peresaad agents is looking for purity of motive on their part. Do any of them seem like they, have sinister intent, or are they just reacting to something that's helping?
I would like you to go ahead and make me an interaction roll. Or actually, I think this would be intellect, wouldn't it?
Fantastic. Then I will spend a bit.
Okay. And I'm gonna say that this is it. It kind of like the starting level of what you get starts at about 4. If you roll high, you might get something different.
I rolled a 3 plus 1 is.
Okay. So with a 4, you understand that all of these people are, exactly who they say they are. They are Peresaad agents. They're all, working in tandem, and you watch them work in a way that is very, telling. Essentially, they are very clearly experienced professionals who work together a great deal, and there seems to be no kind of ill intent or ill will on the part of any of the agents. And so when Isabella, turns Twigg into this large shrub, you understand that what she's doing is so, and it becomes very apparent why she's doing this as soon as her fingers start to move, and she begins moving different pieces of the shrub. You realize very quickly the reason she's doing it is in order to access parts of the body that would be actually harmed if she were to do a more invasive procedure.
So Maurice is kind of pacing towards the outside of this, letting the 3 agents do their work, occasionally glancing up at the thought forms, taking traits.
Yeah, absolutely. And at which point Isabella stops and says, I think I found the problem.
Maurice leans in.
And you see embedded in what looks to be kind of the spine of Twigg's body. In this case, the large kind of central tree branch or tree trunk is embedded a large bullet. It is impossibly lustrous. It is the color of white silver, and there seem to be kind of gleaming glyphs that seem to circle around it. At which point, Marlowe says, I have somebody we need to talk to. And we're going to cut back to Twigg. Twigg, those clouds are roiling. And by the way, sorry, great timing on our part. There's actually a thunderstorm outside.
Ah!
So
also, you can tell where we are in Brooklyn because you said that you pointed up, and then 3 seconds later, I got the thunder.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So basically, after touching the tree, you end up just understanding that there is some real kind of like problems. I say problems, pardon me, I was a little distracted there. After touching the tree, you seem to have this kind of, clear kind of response after touching it. The sky has that. What do you do?
Well, first, how did I get the sense that the memory that I experienced when I touched the oak, was that mine?
Well, it was you in the memory.
That was me.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel like does it feel like it's slotted into place, or does it still feel like separate from my experience?
Why don't you go ahead and give me I'd say that this is kind of, I think this is again another intellect roll. Why don't you make that? And let's start the challenge level at 4.
Okay, and I'm gonna apply another intellect benefit to that.
Cool.
That is an 8.
Okay, so the first thing you understand is that, watching it feels right. It feels like this is very much kind of, I think that it's almost like after the fact, yeah, it has to be me. the details are just too down to it. And I think with an 8 and basically getting a 9 on that challenge roll, you're very aware of kind of like the details, and you recognize that the battlefield in which you found yourself was very much Saturnine. It was the ruined expanse, like a part of it. There was, the details, like you can sense, you could like smell the smell of the gunpowder, sure, but you also smelled the smell of what was a ruined bakery that triggers a lot of kind of muscle memory for you. There just seem to be these sense memories that are just too detailed to be any sort of illusion, and they feel naturally like they belong to you.
All right. So the sky is roiling, and that felt like it was mine. How intimidating is this sky exactly?
It's kind of like, it feels like a storm is coming. It's not quite here yet.
Then I'm gonna move to another tree to
Okay.
see what words are written on it.
And there is another tree, and you begin reading the words, and it seems to be almost like a checklist, except it's not a checklist so much as it's a mantra. And it's basically saying, was it, my name is my power, my will shall be done through my name, and those who hear it, who wish harm, will learn to fear that name. And do you touch it?
Oh yeah.
All right. And as you touch it, the tree, again, you have that moment of seeing yourself, this time on a different battlefield. And your attention, after having fired the gun multiple times, that same, very like lovingly decorated, almost flintlock pistol, after it's fired, you see this kind of simulacrum of yourself looking up into the air as you see, and your perspective, you look up to follow your simulacrum's gaze, and you see what can only be this kind of long missile-like growth incoming. And you recognize what they are right off the bat. These are hate cysts being fired into the city.
Fuck.
And quickly moving, you jump out of the way of this kind of major impact, and you are surrounded by other vislae around you. And when the hate cyst impacts, all of them, many of whom are not kind of blown back by the impact of the shell, they take a look and kind of very cautiously begin walking towards what appears to be this large inert form. And that's when the laughter starts. First one vislae, and then another, and then another. All of them are laughing uncontrollably. And one of them is doubling so hard, they're burying their hands to their head, and they are, they've put their head between their knees, and they're very clearly in pain. And you realize if you hadn't moved fast enough, you would have been on the receiving end of this kind of raucous laughter, horrific cyst. And that is when you gain your +1 resist. Or not +1 resist, your +1 dodge.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to cut back to outside of Twigg. It is not too long that Marlowe has been away, Maurice. It's been minutes. But while you're watching Twigg kind of toss and turn in their sleep, suddenly the sound of the door closing alerts you. And Marlowe is back. And Marlowe has brought a friend, what seems to be a tall, actually, you know what? As soon as I figure this out, Chris, why don't you describe your character for us?
Sure. So I am 5'6". I appear masculine. I've got like cropped brown hair. But that's the most normal part of me. My entire body is covered in a tattoo. It is like a turquoise and green pattern with like bold black outlines in between that kind of look like puzzle pieces, except more like fluid and irregular. They don't have as clear interlocking elements. That covers all of me, and I am wearing like a open tunic and shirt and pants that are kind of like monastic looking, like something you would see in like an old kung fu movie. Not exactly like that. Like I'm not trying to imitate that, but it's reminiscent of that.
Yeah, and Maurice, you see this new figure kind of approaching, probably at this point moving very slowly towards where Marlowe is pointing. What do you do?
I'd like to get a read on this new person's motives.
Absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and give me just a straight roll with, you can apply Bene or Sortilege, however you like.
And I do have the +1 to that ability.
Yeah, you do. So you start with one venture.
8 + 1.
All right. So you get the sense as you actually, let me see. Yeah, I think you get the sense that there's a lot more to this person than meets the eye. Just kind of like getting a cold read off somebody for the first time. You know, there seems to be this kind of flicker of maybe inspiration behind their eyes, behind his eyes, and you're taking a look, and you start recognizing what look to be kind of, you see right off the bat what looks to be, actually, what are you decked out with, Esthain?
Like clothing wise?
I'd say not just clothing wise, but like equipment.
Oh,
What would be immediately apparent?
I think nothing would be immediately apparent other than the clothing, except I do wear a like a silver chain with a bullet
Yeah, and
pendant.
yeah,
That's other than that, you can't really see anything on me.
yeah, and I think that probably the read off of their, yeah, I was gonna say with a pretty high roll, 9. What are you kind of thinking about right now, Esthain?
I am having these conflicting feelings of like nervousness and excitement. Nervousness that I'm excited to be able to help with this thing, but it seems complex, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do what's been asked of me.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most disconcerting thing that you get off of this read here, Maurice, is just the idea that there's somebody being brought in as an expert who is also a little nervous, who's also kind of a little fearful of the circumstance.
And I think I would only take action if I thought that I saw recognition in this person's eyes. If they saw Twigg, if they recognized Twigg, I would take action. But if I don't see that, I'll let it play.
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be any recognition in his eyes.
I'll give a professional nod in your direction as you approach.
I'll return it.
Well, you can help him, right?
Well, I suppose that remains to be seen. I will need some sort of summary. What is it that we're working with?
And Isabella kind of, at this point, the spell has kind of worn off. And you see kind of Twigg again, kind of in their regular state with the nosebleed, at which point Isabella and Marlowe kind of speak very hushedly to you about, we found a bullet in his spinal column, in their spinal column. And it's a magical bullet. We don't know what it does. We don't know why it didn't kill them outright. And we need you to talk to it. Because the only way it's coming out is if it's coming out by choice.
All right. Okay. How shall we begin? What would you suggest?
Well, maybe we should. Well, maybe you should try to talk to it. I don't know.
Do I have? Has Twig's body gone back to normal?
It has, but that Vance, when you kind of look at that, Isabel says, I held on to it. I can cast it again if you need a way for you to see them on the inside, if that will help.
It will. I'll need some form of direct contact.
Okay.
Not necessarily physical, but direct contact.
Very well. And okay, so I just need you to do this as quickly as you can, because I can't hold the spell but for so long.
Right.
And she again places her hands on Twig's temples, and that same green energy passes between them, and again Twig becomes a shrub. And again, she and Thomas then kind of part the branches aside, and you see in that central branch that gleaming silver bullet.
Okay. I would say the moment that I can see the bullet, because I'm trying to do this quickly, I kind of reach out to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily with words yet. I more kind of like reach out to it with feelings or impressions of like curiosity and warmth and concern, and like a request for a reply.
All right. I would like you to make an interaction roll. You need to beat a 4.
Okay. Do you think that persuasion would be relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. Persuasion definitely counts.
All right. Then I will also use a bene. So my venture is 3.
Okay.
I'm really glad I did that because I rolled a 2.
Oh man. So, but with
Taking
the
precautions.
with the 3 venture, you do you kind of address it, and you said not really with language, but really with intention.
Yeah, I my habit in situations like this is not to immediately resort to words. The first step is kind of like an establishing of consent
Okay.
before we get to words.
And there is a silence for a few moments, and then there is a feeling of cranky antipathy as the bullet kind of intones back to you. And at that point, we're going to cut to Kyrrie. Kyrrie, what's up?
Cool. So I've been following Geels as he's running away with this tome, and he's headed to the magical laboratory for applied magic. Has he made it there yet?
Oh yeah,
Have I made it there yet?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you're probably with your kind of stealth, you've been managing to kind of keep a good pace behind him, and also just because I forgot to do this during while we were kind of dealing with the spells casting magic, I am going to turn another card. And the card we get, ooh, this one's good. Let's go ahead and put that in a new window. This card is the Empty Gallows. Rescue, salvation, solution, favorable judgment, and escape. The gallows claims no victory today. Today we are granted a reprieve. Or we make an escape, or someone rescues us. Whatever the reason, the threat is gone. The problem is solved. The empty gallows brings a feeling of relief, of gratitude, and newfound purpose. It is sudden extension of life. The empty gallows serves as the location card for the Notions family. So, in this case, we have the magic of the pale is amplified, and the magic of the green is lessened. So, I think that at this point, what we do here is, I think that Geels tries to enter into the lecture hall, or into the laboratory, and finds it shut, and begins to panic.
Okay.
What do you do?
So I think I'm going to make myself known to him, but I think I'm first. So I'm going to step out from behind maybe a column or some sort of other artifact by which I was held. So I'm going to start by trying to persuade him. So I'm going to say, Geel, what's the matter?
And Geel starts just absolutely. If he jumped, it had to have been at least a foot or two. And so when he jumps, he turns around and says, "Oh God, it's you." Hold on, Hopper, do me a favor. Keep the paper out of there.
Yeah, sorry.
So basically, Geels jumps out of their skin and just says, "Is this your fault? Is this what you did?"
What I did?
And he's holding the grimoire. And just, "Is this your fault?"
Is this you mean the grimoire?
Yeah, he said, "Did you make me steal this?"
You didn't choose to take it.
No. No. Why would I? No. I don't want to set foot in that library.
Geel, what is the last thing you remember?
I was watching the demonstration, and I don't know, I felt it was like someone was just moving my limbs for me.
Okay. And the next thing you remember?
I walked out of the lecture hall. I remember everything.
When is the next time you remember being in control of your actions? Just now?
Yeah. Well, I just saw myself with this, and I just knew that I had to put it someplace safe where nobody could get it.
So it sounds to me like you broke an enchantment of some kind.
I don't know what caused it. I just know that I'm not supposed to have this. Nobody is supposed to have this.
Geel, I am a librarian. Can I see the book?
I'd like you to make a persuasion roll. So, interaction.
Okay. Excellent. So I will use a bene. What's my challenge?
I'm going to say 5.
Okay. So 1 bene. 7.
Awesome. Okay. So, I think that his kind of like there's this instinct of antipathy towards you, this kind of rivalry that you guys have, and then he just
Even with the mark?
That is a good point. Oh, so you don't recognize? Okay, he doesn't
No,
recognize
he doesn't
you.
recognize me. No.
All right, no, he doesn't. So we're gonna retcon that. With the anonymous mark, he just sees somebody very authoritative asking him to see the
Who has
book.
called herself a librarian? All
Uh-huh.
things considered.
Yeah,
Decided to
and
go with that.
yeah, so I think at this point he just kind of relents and he hands over the book. And from that 8 that you rolled previously, the book is Zaleska's Grimoire. And
Celestica.
yeah, Zaleska was very interested in particular about, she was a prolific, you remember her as being a prolific Vance, somebody who worked a great deal on crafting new spells for the use of other Vances, but she was also very secretive. And this has been kind of a long, kind of treasured tome in your library because essentially it is a massive encrypted tome in that there are rumored to be several pieces or ciphers that basically Zaleska left behind when she went to the Pale. And rumor has it that if you collect all of the ciphers, you would be able to unlock the tome and read and have access to all the spells that Zaleska crafted.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm immediately thinking the last thing from what Geel just described. The last thing he remembers was seeing the demonstration done, and that demonstration was of a spell that was new and created. So, logically speaking, if I were someone who was investigating what exactly is going on here, I'd be maybe not out of my mind to suspect Jaro might have something to do with this.
That is certainly something you can think.
That is indeed something I'm thinking.
Yeah, so do you relate this to him, or do you keep this to your confidence?
I think I'm going to keep it in my confidence for now, but I am going to ask Geel, you don't have any recollection of who asked you to go get this? No memory of a voice or a command word?
No, whoever they were very quiet. They just took control.
Okay.
But this is the strange thing. Is they had to be a Vance. There's no way they could have gotten through the wards and done that unless they were a Vance. And he's starting to cry.
Okay. Kyrrie's not very good at emotion. But she has read Freud back in the gray, so she's gonna go up to him, and especially given who she is at the moment, or who she's not, maybe is the better way to describe that. She's gonna put her hand on his shoulder, and she's going to go, "Are you okay? How do you feel about what's just happened to you?" Almost a little uncertain, like she doesn't know if this is the right thing to say.
And I think, finally, Geel says, well, I'm better now, I think. I'm better knowing somebody else is helping. Thank you.
I'll take it from here.
All right.
Kyrrie decides she's going to use her authority.
Excellent. And Geels hands you the grimoire.
Excellent.
Okay. And on that note, I think that this is actually a really good time for us to take a break. So why don't everybody, we're going to take 5 or 10 just to get a bio break and make sure that our tech is up to snuff. And we will rejoin you guys at 6:10. we're back. Thank you guys for rejoining us. We are once again, if you're just joining, playing episode 4 of The Hole in the World, our live play of Invisible Sun by Monty Cook Games. We have had a number of stunning revelations in the first half, namely that there is a bullet lodged in Twigg's brain. Our guest, played by Christopher Green, Esthain, is in the process of talking said bullet out of the current predicament. And meanwhile, it seems that someone is trying to make off with a very powerful grimoire. So, that being said, let's cut back to Twigg in the forest. Twigg, how you doing?
Twigg's a little bit shook. So far, all the trees around me have words on them, and every time I've read or interacted with one, I've regained something that seems to be like a memory of mine.
Mm-hmm.
It feels right, and that is deeply disturbing and chock full of fuckery.
That is, I think that's definitely something to put on a t-shirt.
So this, what are the clouds doing right now?
They are roiling. They are beginning to thunder.
I guess I don't really, and I don't really know how to get out of here. I'm in the middle of a massive impossible forest. I think my best bet is to just keep trying to reclaim bits of myself while I can, because I don't see a doorway, and I don't know how else I would get out.
Absolutely. Okay.
So I'm gonna fuck off away from the biggest trees, because I'm not getting hit by magic lightning or some shit. Twig is gonna find a nice little, nice smaller tree, something a little bit more quaint.
And so, yeah, I think you begin kind of searching around this. You were in this glade and you were starting to go deeper into the woods, and you find lovingly manicured, not far away, another tree. That is, a little bit more than a sapling. It's a very young tree. And what you see written on it are terms of endearment. They're very, very loving phrases. And you notice that, basically there seems to be a path, almost like of pine needles and kind of like this, still very natural, but also just very kind of well kept, leading to the tree. The tree itself seems to be kind of surrounded on every side by a bramble, except it's like a bramble without thorns, and leading in is kind of this natural trellis of vines kind of forming like a curtain that you can kind of see this young tree through. What do you do?
I'd like to skirt around the perimeter of this area.
Okay. Yeah, as you are walking around, you see these kind of brambles, and through it, you think you see something in the tree. As you're kind of, actually, you know what? Why don't you make me a perception roll?
Or I could just drop a bunch of shit.
Yeah, that's always an option.
Always an option.
Perception roll.
Yeah. And I'm going to say that this is challenge 5.
Nope.
If
it was searching, I'd be good.
Yeah. Well,
that's a 5.
Well, so it depends. When you start taking a look, are you actually, before we kind of decide whether or not Are you searching for anything in particular?
Danger.
Let me see.
Honestly, anything or
Mhm.
any danger and any kind of like sentience, some sort of the results of sentient behavior. Like this is clearly natural, but it's also very unnatural.
Okay.
Um,
So I think that would definitely apply in this case. So I think you do make the cutoff. Yeah, so I think the very first thing you get is you do get a feeling of consciousness wafting off of the... you get the feeling that there is something reassuring and very sentient about that tree that is kind of, separated off in its own bramble. However, you also get a sentience off of the roiling clouds above you. It feels malicious, like it is following you.
That's unfortunate. All right. I think Twig. I'll go back to the entryway. I don't really see any need to fight my way through a bunch of thornless brambles.
Okay.
And approach that tree.
Yeah, and as you're kind of, it's almost for a moment, a second, but you see as you're kind of walking through this curtain of ivy, draped down from the trellis, you, or arbor in this case, you actually think you see a face in the tree. But when you pass through the ivy, it's gone. And instead is this tree, once again, kind of written on it, all over it, as if its leaves and its bark were paper, are words of love. What do you do?
I'm gonna eat that.
I was gonna say
God.
eat it.
And
Honestly, have you no respect for the love poetry of 15,000 generations that you're probably consuming?
The
Probably
way
gonna
to a man's
He
heart is to
respects
his
it so
stomach,
much
right?
he's gonna make it part of him.
and as soon as you touch it, you get another flash. But this time, you recognize that the words of endearment and love are your own.
Ooh.
And you have this kind of, this stirring, where the previous memories had been of kind of this all-encompassing conflict. What you do see instead now is what appears to be, a snapshot of better days. And you are talking to a young woman. You are sitting what looks like maybe in a cafe, someplace very cozy. There's music playing. The music is soft but upbeat. And you are reading a poem to her. And she is looking at you lovingly. And she flips her, she brushes her bright green hair back behind her ear to hear you better. And that's when you feel the hand, a clawed hand, grip you on your shoulder and pull you away from the tree. And you now have access to your forte ability, Perfect Memory.
Ironically.
Took a while to kick in.
Yeah, and
Well,
you
I
are
remember what I remember very well.
you are pulled and you are spun, and there is in front of you what can only be a demon, and it is twice as tall as you easily, and its skin all seems to be ending in pointed acute angles, and its skin is a lustrous silver with magical glyphs seemingly encircling every inch. and it says to you, "What kind of fool drinks red wine?" And that's when we're gonna cut to the outside. Maurice and Esthain, you are watching what, there was a moment on Twigg's now leafy visage where it seemed kind of like to flourish and to grow more verdant, and now it is beginning to brown. And Isabella says, I think there's something going on. Esthain, you have to hurry.
Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is use Psychometry.
Alright.
I'm going to reach out and actually touch the bullet. And what this does is, when I touch a creature or object, I get a sense of something about its nature or past.
You, from its past, okay, so you touch the bullet, and not, what is it like when you touch an object for the first time, Esthain?
It is kind of overwhelming. I've had to learn how to not give the outward signs of how overwhelming it is. It's kind of like, I don't know, like static electricity, and it's like in how unexpected it is, except way more than that.
Excellent. Okay, so you feel that shock, and not only that, but you sense that what this thing is. You get kind of like a flash of its most recent memory. It is talking, and it seems to be laying next to other bullets, all in a row, as if from smallest to largest, and it is facing a large multi-barreled weapon, probably somewhat like a pepper box, except this thing, it is lovingly crafted, and as if it had many Rococo style designs, and there are these kind of images that are graven into the gun itself that are suggestive of kind of powerful magic. Basically suggesting kind of malevolent purpose, but also, to inspire fear in those who would, dare stand against our wielder. And you hear two words kind of echoing in the bullet's mind: mother gun. And the next thing you get is a sense of begrudging servitude. And that's what I'll give you for your psychometry.
Okay, so I feeling that. I'm gonna reach out, and not with words, not with audible words, but in this sort of silent communication with the thing, I'm gonna say, we don't have a lot of time, but I will say this: I can take you back where you belong.
And in that same kind of scratchy, cranky antipathy, it says, "So did Mother send you? Or did Marlowe?"
And I kind of glance around at everybody for a second, and then I think to it, Marlowe.
Good. And we are going to cut there back to Kyrrie. Kyrrie, you're walking with Geel.
Yeah.
I think probably begrudgingly he's kind of walking beside you, and you're carrying the grimoire.
Yes, although he thinks I'm someone of importance. So I think, well, he actually doesn't know who I am. He just thinks I am someone else. So I'm carrying the grimoire, but I mean, do I get a sense that he's still troubled? I mean, last we sort of left him that he was like okay, or he'd gotten to a point of being slightly more okay.
Yeah, I think he's starting to feel better now that he's with an authority figure,
Yeah.
or what he presumes is one.
Right.
I think he feels reassured. This is a journeyman who just became a first degree Vance. All the bravado in the world is not enough to kind of overcome that, natural insecurity. And I think there's kind of a comfort there.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I think Kyrrie is sort of, having not usually been in a position where she can be in a position of authority, frantically scrambling to try to think, okay, what should I do? What should I tell him to do? Like, how do I make the situation better? So, I don't know. I guess the conclave's still going on, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be going on for the next 3 weeks.
Okay. I'm going to say to Geel before, I guess I'm kind of walking him back maybe to like where the major of the conclave is happening in terms of the demonstrations and things, to kind of return him back to that since he was sent away from that kind of environment and those things. But before I do, I kind of turn him around and I say, don't worry about this. We are going to take great care of it. We're going to look after it, and we're going to get to the bottom of who did this to you, why it was done. But in order for us to do that work, I need you to tell me that you won't tell anyone what happened. The last thing we want here is a panic, that someone inside the Vancian Order, as you yourself said, is conducting some kind of subterfuge or possessing people. You know as well as I, it would cause an all-out panic. And we need to be able to have the ability to do our best work without potentially alerting the people who have done this to you of the requirement, or of the fact that we are doing this investigation. Can you do that for me? Can you keep this on the down low?
I would like you to make another persuasion roll. It's going to be lower than last time.
Sure.
It's probably going to be challenge rating 3.
Okay.
I can't imagine he would be jazzed for people to find out about this.
Probably not. He's very, he follows the rules. There's that. But, if he feels like an authority figure is telling him, this is what we want you to do. So that's a 4, and plus 1 Ben, a 5.
Okay. And yeah, I think that he's still a little bit shell-shocked. I think he's kind of starting to understand as kind of I think somebody who's, in school and kind of just fresh out of like that, first training program. He's starting to kind of get a dose of real life, and he's realizing how privileged he's been. And he says, yeah, absolutely. I'll keep this to myself until you say otherwise.
Sure. Oh, and Geel.
Mm-hmm.
That girl. I see you fighting with her sometimes. That librarian, that Kyrrie, she just published a new paper, One or Several Wolves, in Cetterinian Linguistica Grammatica. Why don't you go ahead and maybe read that, write up a response, see what you can critique.
And he there's a cross of emotions across his face as he says, well, I don't see how it's relevant, Cantrell, but okay, I'll do that.
She's good, that girl, but I think you might be able to say something actually useful about her work. Why don't you go ahead and direct your energy? I can't think of a better first year Vance who would be up to the ability to actually critique that effectively. And I would set that as a challenge to you.
And I think the flattery kind of reels him back in a little bit. I says, okay, all right. Whatever you say, Cantrell, thank you. And I hope that when it comes time for me to re-examine my degree in the order, that maybe I could use you as a reference?
Of course. Always.
Okay. And he says, well, do you need me to stay or or should I go home?
No, you've done more than enough. You've been through more than enough. Please, go rejoin the festivities. You're going to need your most high faculties to perform what is required of you during the conclave. So please do go get some rest and try and put some of this behind you while we investigate.
Okay. All right. Thanks again. And just very somberly, very kind of solemnly, just walks back to his towards the direction of the dorms. And I would like you to actually award yourself 1 joy for that. That was pretty great.
Sure.
I can't wait to see what happens when he attempts to get a promotion in the order.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh, there's this mysterious reference woman who exists. I never really got her name, but she definitely was a real thing.
Yeah, it's like the academic equivalent of my Canadian girlfriend.
Yeah, and I think at that point he probably kind of glances back, like, should I go back and ask for a name? Oh, it's a small campus. I'll remember.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Meanwhile, Kyrrie's kind of going, did I really try to make him feel better fighting him to critique my paper? What on earth was I thinking?
I love it. Yeah, so mark that joy for yourself. And where are you headed to now that you have the Grimoire in your possession?
So I remember where I left them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember where, I guess, where Twigg's being examined. But first, is there somewhere private? I mean, actually, the library would be a great option if it's nearby, but I'd like to go somewhere private to actually have a conversation with the Grimoire.
Very well. I think that you can find just such a place, just by virtue of the fact that you're very familiar with the campus.
Okay. Now, obviously, it's still locked, and I'm imagining, given the complexity and what I know about the lock, that it's going to take a long time or a lot of effort to figure out how to actually open it. But I do have a spell called Sabuchin's Thousandth Word, and that is a spell that, with a single word, grants an inanimate object the power of speech. It speaks with the language of the vislae. I can speak with it, but it's not automatically predisposed to help or hinder me. Instead, my past and current treatment of the object affects its reaction to me.
Excellent. All right. So why don't do you hold on to the spell when you cast it?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and take the hit to sorcery to be able to do that.
Awesome. Okay, so what is the first thing you say to this book?
I'm going to say, well, first of all, greetings, Zaleska's Grimoire. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you in this way. It's very rare that I'm able to speak with books, but usually I only reserve this kind of interaction with a book for something that I need information from, not already visible in its pages. Given the secret nature of the information in your pages, and that you may not wish to give of said information unless the recipient is able to open you properly, I wanted to ask you a few things about the nature of your last interactions. So the first thing I want to ask you is who, if you can remember, last read you?
Well, and I think what it does is it kind of pauses, and then it says, well, my mistress, of course. Zaleska herself was the last person to read me.
And to your knowledge, no one after Zaleska has ever opened your cover?
No one has been as wise as my mistress. No one has been as capable as my mistress, and so my secrets are mine to keep.
Did your mistress care for you? Take care of you, polish your cover, make sure your binding was kept very well knit?
I am as much her instrument as I am a part of her. Of course she cared for me.
She took you with her?
She left. She went to the Pale. She did not have the opportunity, and I think that there she may have found no reason to take me.
But on her adventures, as she went around creating spells, She is very famed, as you well know.
Yes. This is true.
Were you always by her side?
Always.
And she disclosed her heart to you, or just her mind?
And I think it kind of quiets for a moment, and then almost like a whisper. Both. What is it you wish to know, if you are so bold to ask?
I ask your permission to be your guardian for a time, if you will grant it. I may not be like your mistress, but I have made my life caring for knowledge and caring for books. And I don't know how aware you were, but circumstances have arisen where it looks like you are trying to be stolen, or the knowledge from within you taken against your will. I would like to prevent that.
Make a persuasion roll. Add 1 to your venture, in addition to any other rolls you want to make. I'm going to say that this challenge is 6.
Would I be able to count magical lore?
Absolutely.
Okay. 1, 1, and 1. So I get a 3 benefit. And what's my challenge?
6.
Alright, so I got a 5 plus 3.
And again, there's that pause. And says, as long as you do not try to entice from me my mistress's confidences without earning them, I am glad to have you. I am glad to have you as my keeper. And I have your word?
You do have my word. Not until I earn the right to read the information within you will I try to take it from you. That is all true librarians. You must earn what is within. You can't just take it.
Then we are aligned. And I
One
will
last-
accompany you for a time, at least.
It will be my pleasure to have you with me. And one last question before we conclude the conversation. What was she like, Zaleska? Brilliant, impulsive, unsure, uncertain sometimes?
All of those things, but still one of the best of us.
I would expect it no less. Her memory and her legacy are proof of that.
And there is a feeling of warmth from the book. Not literal, figurative. And
Would hope not.
and it quiets, and it returns to being just a book.
Okay. Having done that, I then will look to go join up with Maurice and Twigg.
Okay. So you begin making your way back to the memorial hall. Yeah. So Maurice, it's at this point that Marlowe looks at Esthain, looks at Twigg, looks at Isabella, and at Thomas, and says, okay, Esthain, if you have this under control, I have to check downstairs, make sure everything's all right with the event. I'll be back shortly. I will bring as much assistance as I can. If there's anything I can do in the meantime, any one of you, Thomas or Isabella, can contact me psychically. We'll be fine.
I sort of hear that, but not really.
Yeah.
Because most of my mental energy is focused on what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Maurice, what are you doing to kind of like, tamp down kind of the panic? Is there anything you're doing?
Yeah.
Anything you're thinking about?
So, right before Marlowe leaves, Maurice is kind of can't get comfortable. He's bending down on his knees next to Esthain and Twigg, and then readjusting. He's kind of pouring sweat. Takes off his cap and wipes his brow, puts it back, and he's kind of looking back and forth and is trying to gauge what exactly Esthain's doing and if Maurice could be any help. Takes off his cardigan to try and kind of prop up Twigg's head, kind of looking for approval before he does anything. And then as Marlowe announces, thank you. You've done more than you know.
Yeah, Esthain, what do you do? Does that register?
Say again. Does what register?
Oh wait, you're speaking to Marlowe, right?
I'm speaking to Marlowe as he leaves, letting Esthain do his work, looking for a moment that I could aid Esthain, if that would be appropriate or welcome.
And there's this kind of calculating look that crosses Marlowe's face, and just like searching look, and says, "Well, all you can do, you've already done, and we appreciate you staying with your friend. I think that's really the best thing you can do. Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing him to us. If it weren't for you, they probably could have died. But we're not out of the woods yet, so make sure to stay here with your friend. Esthain, I've trusted him with my life. He's one of the finest makers I know. You should be in safe hands."
Thank you.
And he begins walking downstairs. Duncan, the entire time, by the way, has just been in your lap, kind of whimpering. And then occasionally, when he gets out of your lap, he's looking very meaningfully and also kind of very hopefully at Twigg, who's prostrate on the couch. Or prostrate on a series of desks, now that I realize that we're back in the classroom. Yeah, and so, speaking of Twigg, you are faced with what can only be the silver, lustrous demon, and it has told you, "Who could drink red wine? You fool."
I'm just kind of staring at it like this is me. Like I don't really. I'm just like back up. Twig just looks at me, just like back off, dude. Like it's just wine.
The demon is twice your height, and it looks to you, and it says, "This plan was so simple, and now my mother will have it out for me. I will lose face to my brothers and sisters. You and your foolishness." The
You
devoured.
done, buddy? I interrupt him to do that. I'm like, you done?
And it sneers, and the clouds begin roiling again overhead. And I'd like you to make a intellect roll for me again. And I think at this point it's a challenge 7.
I'm definitely using a Bene for that.
Okay.
Would this be augmented in any way by magic lore?
Yeah, you know what? I think that because of your interaction with the trees in this place, I'd like you to take another 1 to your venture.
Okay. So that is a +2.
Okay.
That's a 9.
Awesome. All right. So
+2.
Awesome. So that is an 11, which is very handy because you are looking at this creature, and you are realizing you are looking at all of the trees, and you put 2 and 2 together, and you realize that you're home, for lack of a better term. You're inside your own mind, and these trees are almost like synapses. And this thing doesn't belong here. And it might just be as frightened as you are. It's
well. So I'm just so it sounds like you've got some mommy issues, but you don't belong here. You need to leave.
And it sneers. And it says, I am the son of the gun.
Twig laughs at that.
You laugh. You laugh. And I would like you to make a dodge roll.
Ooh.
Do I have any sense that the thing I'm talking to is engaged in another interaction while talking to me?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what happens is it's like somebody having a conversation on the phone while you're talking to them in person. It's like that. It's like when somebody is in a line and they do that while they're in line for coffee or something. It's like, hold on, I'll get right back to you. That type of thing. Yeah. And
you could probably deduce that that Twig is the other person, most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I hearing any of the words of the exchange, or just sort of the fact of it?
I think you are getting some of the words. I think it's what was it? I think the thing you get, because it's got the most rancor to it, is who drinks red wine. And then you just feel this. A few seconds later, you feel this wave of anger as it's like, I am who I am, and it's that sentiment that kind of like you feel as you're talking to it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, the Discord now recognizes the fact that there's a webcam plugged in. And it keeps popping up every 2 minutes and would you like to switch now? And I'm like, no,
you asshole.
You had your time. You had your time. So it is officially Discord's fault.
It's a lot like this conversation, isn't it? Yeah. With the demon.
So I guess I'm dodging this thing after basically mocking it and its mother too. That's another 9. So that is because of my recent reclaiming of memories, I have a +1. I'm proficient in dodging.
Yeah, you are.
So that would be a total of 10.
Excellent. This thing is clumsy, and you realize that it's like a parasite that is attacking the host. It's hurting itself, and it shudders when you dodge out of the way. And it just... And it is letting loose this kind of angry sneer. What do you do?
So I have all my regular equipment, as it were.
In your mind? Yeah.
Yeah, in my brain.
In your brain, you got it, man. Cool.
I'm gonna pull out my half brick and peg him in the face.
Ricky the Brick?
It's Ricky the Brick. He's done work, man.
Yeah.
I think it's gone really well for me. I'm just saying. I might be dead. Who knows? But pegging things in the face with a brick seems to work. So
I saw this cool stream, and a guy had this brick class. I just wanted to play that.
I'm interested to see if the metaphysical brick, if it because it's not corporeal, if that will have any difference in how well the brick works. It's scientifically.
It's like the precept of a brick.
Yes.
It's a conceptual brick.
A proto brick.
As long as actual Twig is not also lifting a brick
and clobbering whatever's in.
Because if anyone's in the line of fire, it's me.
So yeah, I'm gonna peg him in the face with a brick.
Absolutely.
Specifically using this spell barrage, actually, though.
All right. What level is barrage?
That is a level 1, I believe.
All right.
Let me double check because I could be wrong.
So this thing isn't hard to hit.
It's big and it's slow, and it's got mommy issues.
Yeah.
Did I feel the pain of it hurting itself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is.
Okay, so I'm just frantically stop this foolishness. You'll both destroy each other.
And actually, before you roll for your barrage, I would like Esthain to make a persuasion roll. This one is going to be, I think, a 5.
Okay. So then I need to roll a 3.
Mhm.
That is a 6.
Excellent. And I think that, in this case, you are going to gain. I think that this is going to augment your venture going forward. Now, I'd actually like you to make a separate roll for Twig.
Who's rolling what now?
Like,
Actually, no, wait, that's right. You're only talking to the objects, so that's not necessary.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so, I think it starts to slow, and you watch Twig as the like this massive demon seems to like hold its head back and kind of like listen for something that you can't hear. And then it begins to take kind of like a defensive posture as you ready this barrage.
Cool. So Barrage is actually a level 2 spell because constantly
All right. So,
any of loose hand-sized or smaller objects around me fly to nearby target.
Yep.
Color red, facet, air.
All right. So let's actually, as you're casting the spell, turn a card. And this one we've had before and is really good. This is the Ambassador, which is the
I like this one.
the
All right, then.
the Adept of Visions. So diplomacy, reason, discussion, and intelligence. So she hails from a far off land, carrying a message of unity and civility. Very appropriate. I swear to God, this is not actually magic. The ambassador wishes to talk, not to fight. She knows that words and wisdom offer a path to success that violence never could. Her words are careful and measured, never rash or ill-considered. If only there were more such individuals to make the world a better place. The ambassador is the adept of the Visions family. Her magic and skill come from her ability to persuade, which again brings us the idea that the words are magical as any spell or ritual. Just another type of incantation. So
That is my family.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So with an adept, I believe you get a +1 to all actions.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe to all actions. I believe Sovereign gives you +2. Okay. So roll. I want you, because they're taking a defensive posture. You're still going to roll, but you just need to roll a 1. They're not hard to hit, but they're tough.
Wait, so
Yeah. Sorry. Say again.
a 0 is a 10. Oh wait, no, it's a 9 in this.
Yeah. So 9.
That's right.
9 is your max. Wait, did you get a 0?
No, I haven't rolled yet.
Okay. Cool. That said,
Okay. I'm just trying to think of what, because Barrage is level 2 +1 die.
Yeah, so what you can do is you can either take your chances with rolling twice, or for each venture, or for each roll, or you can spend a bene of sorcery to get it up to hit. The only thing about it, I think you would even...
I'll roll twice.
Okay, cool. And tell me what you get on the magic die.
Okay. That's a 2.
Okay.
On the regular die, and then a 9
Awesome.
on the magic die.
Yeah, so how much damage does Barrage do?
It does. The target and anyone close suffer equal to the level of the spell.
Okay. So the level of the spell is 2. And you see basically it kind of take this defensive posture. And your brick, actually, when you throw the brick, you think you're about to throw the brick, but you realize that as you've just cast it out, that it's basically like a barrage of a light. And each one seems to pepper the shell of this bullet demon. And they basically, you sense that there's not much damage getting through its shell, but essentially you see it kind of crinkle in places, and at that point, I need you to take 1 injury for the damage that did get through.
Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. I mean, I am having a fight inside my own brain.
Yes, you are. That is the thing
Use your
in
words.
Invisible Sun.
Clearly use your words, Twig. Use your words. So says the ambassador.
Yeah, speaking of the ambassador, I think that when you do that, it sees you kind of shrivel. Not shrivel, but kind of actually get somewhat blinded and by your own light, and some of the wounds kind of that are similar to those of the bullet demon appear on you. And I think at that point, you see it turn its head and say, "Very well, get me out." And we cut back to Esthain. And Esthain, you watch as the bullet seems to kind of push itself out of the central branch of Twigg's spine and just plop into your hand. Twig, the bullet demon, vanishes from sight. Esthain, what do you do?
I just close my hand over the bullet, and I look at everyone else and say, I'll hold on to this.
Is that safe?
I assume so. From understanding its motives, I believe that this is what it wanted.
And Maurice looks down to Twig. Is Twig conscious?
Twig is not conscious.
Well, what do we do now? The bullet's out.
And I turn to Isabel.
Yeah, Isabella and Thomas.
Yeah, I turn to them and I'm like, I suppose you would be the one to answer this question.
And Isabella is kind of looking at you a little gobsmacked and just said, I've never seen anybody do something like that. And Thomas kind of chimes in, just, yes, we'll handle this. We have some healing magics. We'll make sure they're conscious as soon as they get a chance to rest and recuperate. We'll make sure that they are, given the best care. Thank you.
In the meantime, the object seems placated but aggressive. I think it's probably best that it remain with someone who can maintain contact with it.
It should be you, right?
Yes, I was referring to myself.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, Esthain, do you leave or what do you do?
Do I know where Marlowe went?
I think he kind of told you that he would meet you outside.
And that's where I go.
Okay. So you begin.
Wait, if I can, just to thank you later, where might I find you?
That's a complicated question. Do I? I think I say. I assume that you'll remain here by your friend's side. I'll find you again shortly.
Thank you.
Of course.
Maurice is very curious about. He knows that he needs to track down that bullet and find out more about it, but he's not willing to leave Twig's side at this point.
Mm-hmm. You kind of get that sense. What did you want to do about that instinct, Maurice?
Unfortunately, I don't think I have any tools at my disposal to do anything about it. And right now, I have to focus all my attention on Twig. So still kind of, kneeling at his side.
Okay, cool. So in that case, Esthain, yeah, you're pretty much clear to leave.
Okay, I just I realized that it probably looks funny for me to just like to be like, you guys good here? All right, I'm out. So I turn around as I'm leaving and I'm like, I'm going to attempt to find Marlowe and we'll discuss what we should do with the object.
Okay.
I'm Maurice. Maurice Webb, by the way.
Oh, Esthain.
Esthain, you were, feeling, getting second guessing about leaving.
No, I was still leaving. I just didn't want to look weird, dashing out without saying anything. So I was just sort of contextualizing my departure.
Okay.
And since he said he was going to find Maurice, Maurice said his name.
Oh, is that what it's?
Well, I introduced myself. I'm Maurice, by the way. So find me later.
Okay.
And yeah, what's your kind of reply to that, Esthain?
About seeing him later?
Yeah.
Just, yes, as long as you plan to remain here, I shouldn't be gone long.
Yeah. Maurice, what do you do?
Maurice watches him leave and turns back to Twigg. Sitting with Isabella and Thomas.
And Twigg, I think at this point has a much more. They're no longer a shrub, and they're also no longer bleeding from the nose.
Hooray!
They are also kind of having this kind of seemingly more tranquil, less kind of tossing and turning expression on. And so at this point, I think that we cut to Kyrrie. You are on your way back towards the Memorial Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at this point that you see approaching you the Peresaad agent that assisted Twigg. And just says, "Oh, hello. Your friend is doing well. Where did you get that?"
The library, where I work.
That is a very powerful grimoire.
I am aware.
Yes.
I have been tasked with carrying this book, and in fact, if you wish to ask it, you may. It has consented.
Well, whether or not you have asked this book to consent or not to you carrying it is just, there's no foregoing the fact that this is a Grand Magus' grimoire. It shouldn't be in anybody's hands. That should be in a restricted area of the library.
I am a librarian. I can go into the restricted section. In fact, I will return it there.
Well, I haven't seen you before, so I think I'll be taking that.
I'm afraid you wouldn't want to do that.
Oh, wouldn't I?
The book doesn't want you to carry it.
Well, I'm afraid I don't really care what it wants. And you hear it. You hear Marlowe talking to himself, and you realize that he is casting a spell. And the very first spell that he casts is, I have it here, Uriel's Vicordius Action, and you recognize it as he casts it. Throwing caution to the wind, I can take an additional action this round and 2 actions next round. However, in my mad haste, these actions suffer a -1 penalty. And you watch as this Peresaad agent in this begins to blur and begins to move very quickly, and he advances towards you and tries to wrest the book out of your grip.
Do I get a reaction?
Of course, you are going to need to give me a resistance roll.
Okay.
It is -1, so you need to beat a 4.
Okay. In order to hold the book, or in order to...
In
is
order,
that like Success.
in order to hold the book.
Okay. All right. And I can't add like a Bene for movement or anything, or like try to dodge.
I think at this point, yeah, actually, you know what? Let's do a dodge roll first, because this is going to be a test to see if you can get out of his way
Out
before.
of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also the resist will come if he gets hands on the book. So
Okay.
why don't you give me, again, challenge rating 4. So give me that dodge roll first. And this would be
Okay.
a movement roll.
Perfect. And then perfect. Glad I did that. So I got a 4, and then with 1 Bene, 5.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, he does this very quick snatch at it, but at the same time, your kind of protective embrace of the book gives you a little bit more leverage to just kind of pivot out of their way.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I think that, again, kind of sped up, there seems to be kind of like he's again trying to move as if to cast something. And at this point, I would like you to take your action.
Okay. Can I run?
Absolutely. Are you running past him?
Which way is the? How would I get back to
So
my car?
basically what happens is he exited the memorial hall as you were approaching it. So the only way to kind of get back to your friends is through him.
Is there like a way to go, or is there like another entry that could, like once within the building, lead to that same room?
Maybe. I think there's
Even
probably
if it's
an
like more
alternative entry.
circuitous?
Yeah, it's more circuitous, but you'd have to still kind of do a banana curve around him.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to
I feel like
necessarily go
he's-
straight through.
He would expect me to charge him, I think. So to kind of do the unexpected, I think I want to try the banana around towards a different entrance and then like hightail it to the room where Maurice and Twigg are.
And so you know for a fact, however, that casting Vicordia's action, he's going to get basically 2 more actions as soon as you take yours. So
Right.
just bear that in mind. You being advanced, you would understand what the spell does.
True. Well, maybe in the spirit of diplomacy and ambassadorianness, I'd like to, before he says anything else, I'd like to say, wait. Before you take this from me, would you be willing to listen to the real reason I have?
Are you casting?
And I guess it's persuasive. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to break combat and see if he'll listen, as opposed to like try to wrestle it out of my hands.
So I'm gonna say, I think you're gonna. This is a antagonistic action, and I think you'd have to persuade him. It would have to be like unnaturally challenging. Let's say this is a 7.
Okay. So 1 by 9.
I think at this point, I think that even with a 9, there's no kind of like, I think there's no way to get this person to immediately acquiesce just because their thought is kind of bent on this book.
Right.
But I think what Marlowe does is looks at you and says, "What are you offering?"
I'm gonna try some persuasion. You're Peresaad. I
am.
know of the Peresaad, and in fact, live next to someone I believe to be a Peresaad. In fact, I myself was asked to be a Peresaad at one point. So I know the kinds of things that you do. This book was taken from me, or this book was found in the possession of someone who can't remember how he got it out of the library. I'm investigating this without raising suspicion. If you will allow me to assist you in this investigation, I will.
At which point, he says, I know how it got out of the library. And
Interesting.
and he says, if you don't hand that back to me, I am going to kill you. And he begins swirling his hands and muttering and talking to a spell. And you can tell what the spell is. Now, you've talked to him long enough that the Vicordius action has worn off. But you know what spell he's about to cast. And
how far from that room is all this taking place?
it's at this point, Esthain, that you are probably leaving the Memorial Hall to meet this character, to meet Marlowe.
Am I going to see this then?
Question. How difficult is it to interrupt the casting of a spell?
I would say it's usually equal to the level of the spell if you have an equal counterspell.
I don't mean counterspell. I mean, like, if somebody's casting a spell, it takes some time, and then you say, chuck a brick at their face, or kick them in the nuts, or something similar. I feel like that would be detrimental to one's ability to communicate with an active spell.
It's kind of like a round, right? So the whole thing is they're going to get an action and then you're going to get an action.
Fair.
So
it's not simultaneous.
Unfortunately, no. Unless you have an effect that lets you do that, or I give you a GM shift.
Fair.
Okay. So what I was going to say, Esthain, what do you do as soon as you kind of see this? And you recognize the spell.
What does this look like from my perspective? What do I see going on?
Yeah, what you see is Marlowe talking very confidently to this woman, to this Vancian woman carrying a book, who he is starting to swirl his hands, and you would know that this is a gamma level spell. This is actually Uzuskura's quadripartite assault, as these 4 motes of light begin swirling in the Vance's hand. However, Esthain, you just see these 4 motes of light beginning to circle in this outstretched set of hands.
Okay, I start sprinting for that, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to try to get a read on this woman. I saw her already, right? We were in the same room briefly.
I think, yeah. And then right before I left. Although, question, Zach, how close are we to sun? We're not at anywhere close to like the spell wearing off, right? Me being unknown.
Yeah, you're not even close. It's not until next sunset.
Right. So yeah, it's not like I'm magically going to change mid.
Does that apply like each new time that someone sees her, or is she consistently looking like the same other person?
She consistently looks like the same other person, I believe.
Okay, so then I'm going to recognize her from before. Yeah. So as I'm like running toward them, I'm trying to see if I can figure out what her deal is. In other words, like her like body language. Is she saying anything? I'm trying to like use my understanding of people's motives.
Yeah, I want to. Why don't you give me a perception roll, level 3 challenge?
Okay, so I need a 2. And that is a 1.
That is a 1. Okay. Yeah, I think even with a 1, you do gather the sense that, she has this loving embrace of the grimoire, and she's kind of protecting it and kind of clutching it. But you can't get a read off of what Marlowe's about to do, just probably from virtue of the fact that you are not familiar with that kind of magic. You do understand, however, that the emotion that he is communicating is one of sheer confidence.
Okay.
What do you do?
I think I take out like from a little satchel at my waist, I take out a little ball. It's about 4 inches in diameter, and then I take out a metal piece that slips over my middle and ring finger, and I put that over my hand, and now there's like a metal pad that's covering the palm of my hand. And I yell at the woman, "What are you doing?"
Help me! This man's trying to attack me! Free action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you do? I'm going to say at this point, I'm going to do a GM shift here. I want... this. I think that the timing is too good on this for me to pass up.
Oh no.
Yeah, so Esthain, I want you to take 1 despair as the quadripartite assault casts, except you in your shouting, you threw off Marlowe's aim, and now these 4 bolts of light, which become magical missiles in this Vance's hands, 2 of them streak for Kyrrie, and 2 of them streak towards you, and I need each of you to make 2 dodge rolls. And those dodge rolls, I need 2 successes on each equal to a level 5.
Okay. So we roll 2 die twice?
Yeah, you would need to basically you'd have to spend 2 sortilege to dodge both, or you just have to eat one of the missiles if you don't have it.
Okay.
Man, even with the sortilege, that's tough.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think I'm actually going to eat the damage because I think that this would be such a shock to me that I would not have the wherewithal to get out of the way.
Okay. I mean, and I'm prepped for. I knew that he's gonna attack, and I'm trying to get the book, so I think I am gonna try to dodge, given that I was anticipating something like this happening.
Yeah.
I do have 2 sortilege, which I can spend and then go down to 0.
Absolutely. Do that.
Okay. And then roll twice.
Yep. Roll twice for each. Tell me what you get on the magic die for each one.
Okay. All right. The first time, 8 and 2, and the magic die is 8.
Okay.
And the second time is 7 and 2, but this time the magic die is 2.
Okay. So unfortunately, each of you take 2 magical missiles to your center mass, and each of them is going to do 2 injuries to you. So each of you sustain a wound and 1 injury, unless you wish to spend a bene to negate that. And I believe that is. I'm trying to remember what the body one is.
I think it's physical.
Yeah.
Physicality.
Yeah. Spend
physicality.
Spend 1 bene of physicality if.
To negate the injury, yeah.
To negate the wound.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it only negates the wound. It does not also negate the injuries.
Wait, which one's worse?
Yeah, the wound.
The wound is
the wounds because that's the
open. It can get worse.
But does that mean that I reduce it to only 1 injury, or I still have those injuries but not the effect of the wound?
You reduce it to actually. Basically, you can negate them, but you eat. You can negate all of the wounds, but you spend 2 bene apiece. Because I realize because they're separate rolls. So you can negate both wounds for 2 bene apiece for each of you. It's just basically at that point, you're going to be out those benes. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
do you guys
just
do
to
that?
make sure I understand mechanically how this works, you could spend a bene to prevent a wound, and then after the fact, if you have any injuries, you can also spend bene, but wounds have to be recovered elsewise.
Yeah, I think you can spend a bene to reduce damage up to or equal to 1 wound. Or you're
reducing the damage. Okay.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
It would cost 2 bene for each of you for 2 separate rolls. So
Meaning like four total?
no,
Two total.
No.
2 total for each of
Yeah,
you.
2 total.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
Sorry
and
about that,
that,
guys.
just to clarify, does not get rid of the injury. It just would take care of the wound.
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
Okay,
actually, no. This would negates all damage if you use 2 bene.
And
But
if you use,
if I use 1 bene, that means that I only take 2 injuries and have no wound.
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm gonna do that.
that's what I will do also.
Cool. So mark 2 injuries for each of you. And I believe at this point, Esthain, it is your turn. Oh, that said, Maurice, I think even from the upper level, because you're not within like the crowded kind of soiree downstairs, you hear boom, 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 boom. What do you do?
How's Twig?
Twig seems to be resting comfortably.
Look up at Thomas and Isabella. What was that?
And they say, wait here. And Isabella stays, it actually rises to investigate the situation, and Thomas stays with Twig.
Maurice looks at Thomas and says, it certainly seems a lot better. Maybe we could be on our way.
Well, I really recommend rest if you can get it, but...
Well, certainly rest not on the desk. Yeah, I could take him to a place where he can sleep. They could...
I mean, will you be okay to move him?
I'll go and kind of shoulder Twig and see how this works.
Okay. So, we'll cut back to you. Right now, we're going to have to get back to the round. Okay. So, Esthain, what are you doing?
I'm gonna call out to Marlowe, and say, I don't understand. We had an arrangement. Whose side are you on?
And I'd like you to make a... No, actually, this isn't going to require a roll. I think at this point, Marlowe looks at you, looks at the situation, and says, I'm on your side. Come on, we have to go now. Do you have it?
Yes, I have it, but what is going on? Who is this person? And why are you firing whatever that was?
And at this point, I think he begins like moving towards you. Kyrrie, what do you do?
So while this is happening, can I cast a spell?
Absolutely. What would you like to cast?
So I have a spell called Norham Sea of Words, which is, it makes it so that words spoken near where I stand when I cast spell appear as written words in the language they are spoken, floating in the air. The words are semi-solid with the consistency of floating feather. If I then use an action talking quickly, the area fills enough words that vision is somewhat obscured. If many people speak, the area quickly becomes opaque and slows movement through it by half, as if it were filled with a dark liquid.
All right, perfect.
So given all the arguing and back and forth happening here, if I'm casting the spell at that time, I imagine words will begin to kind of coalesce quite quickly.
Absolutely. Do you hold on to the spell?
Yes.
Okay.
Mark this.
So you begin to talk, and what are you saying?
I'm speaking words of, well, I'm saying I don't understand exactly what various foot, and it seems like the two of you are in cahoots or something, and that one of you has something that you shouldn't, and in fact that you want this thing that I have that I shouldn't have, and yet I'm protecting so that you don't have the thing that I can't give to anyone else.
And the air begins to fill with words, and they begin to flow together, and like they form almost this soupy kind of texture as they begin to mingle with the words that are also escaping both yours and the agent's lips. And, you know, as I think that at this point, Marlowe, being a Vance, understands exactly what you did and begins just hauling towards Esthain, and his movement's going to be a little bit slowed. What level is your spell? Kyrrie,
My spell, yeah, it's 2.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think that he kind of hurdles it, he kind of like manages to get through the miasma of words, and Esthain, he's about to reach out and grab you.
Before do I have any action available to me before he gets to me?
Yeah, he's about to reach out and grab you. What do you do?
I'm going to use my unseen oil ephemera.
Okay.
It's level 2. Sprinkled on an object that you can hold in one hand, the oil makes the object invisible.
Okay. Absolutely.
What object?
I'm assuming it's on the bullet?
Yes.
Okay.
And I am, I guess, banking on these words around us, like obscuring the act of my doing this, because I actually have to take the oil out and put it on the bullet.
What do I see, if anything?
I think that you've talked at such kind of a rapidity that it's you've easily obscured your vision of kind of what's going on. You just see Esthain being approached by this rogue Peresaad agent.
Okay.
So you definitely cover the casting of the spell with kind of like the chaos of what's going on. Actually, what level is that, now that I think about it?
It's level 2.
All right, it's level 2. Would you go ahead and roll an interaction? I think this would be interaction to see if you can kind of secretly kind of deceive him. That'll be a level 3 challenge.
I will spend interaction. Is that what you said?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to spend an interaction. So I need a 2.
Yep. So you need a 2.
That is a 6.
Awesome. So the bullet.
So I put the oil on the bullet and then quickly put it in my satchel.
Cool. And almost as if you're kind of like a sleight of hand magician, like they kind of like make the card disappear in the hand, you do it with the bullet. Except it's literally still there. It's just coated in this unseen oil. And you drop it into your bag. And at this point, the Peresaad agent grabs you, begins, you realize at this point that he is not casting, from your vision, you are not, you can see that he is not casting a Vance spell. Instead, it seems to be a more general spell, and you see Esthain, and you see this rogue agent Marlowe disappear into thin air, clearly having either absconded or teleported elsewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
But I still have the book.
Yeah, absolutely. You still have it.
Well, I clearly know nothing about that except that they've just disappeared. So, I'm basically at this point, I'm furious. I'm terrified. I don't know either of these two. Well, have I ever seen the rogue Peresaad agent and/or Esthain before, apart from, in the room? Like, did I know them previously on the campus?
If you to know the Peresaad agent, like I think I said towards the beginning, you do know for a fact that the Peresaad agent is somebody you knew in passing, Marlowe Anvers.
Right.
And he was a 3rd degree Vance. And so at that point, your kind of like familiarity ends, unless you would like to make a more general intellect roll. But you would definitely need an intellect roll to understand who Esthain was.
Well,
okay.
Do you have any levels of connection to intelligentsia?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is actually, that's going to add a venture to your roll, and I'd say that this is more of a challenge 6.
Okay. Actually, why not? I'll go ahead and do that. And this would not have anything to do with magical lore, right? Because I haven't seen what he's done. I wouldn't know how to
No,
I didn't know what his power is.
No, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I think though, kind of seeing what they did, with regard to kind of the
Disappearing,
the ball in the hand, you might get an ID.
Okay.
Yeah. So challenge 6 still.
That's true.
All right, 7.
Okay. So I think from this, you would know for a fact that that this person is a maker, because it was very clear that they were kind of beginning to harness this kind of weapon, or maybe this item, and they seem to have some sort of special contraption for it. And at that point, you just you would know that that's kind of the modus operandi of a maker. That said, with regard to actually knowing of this person, this, until you kind of gather more from your compatriots or from the other Peresaad agents, you wouldn't know for a fact.
Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna go, use the cover of the words that have now sort of swarmed and are swimming around me, to try to get back into the hall and find Maurice and Twigg.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think at this point, Maurice, you're kind of finally hurtling down for the second time these stairs, but you're also carrying Twigg with you. Except it's downhill.
And Duncan is like always going like 2 or 3 steps forward, turning back.
Yeah, he's always
turning back, waiting.
He's turning back and looking at you, and the expression, if dogs could talk, it would be like, "Come on, buddy, just 2 more, we got this." And
that's amazing.
Yeah, you guys, you're getting to the foot of the stairs, and I think at this point, let's actually quickly cut back to Twigg. Twigg, you are in this glade, and above you, the sky is also green. It is no longer this roiling negative red.
Interesting.
And there's this kind of feeling of tranquility while you're there. And so, having seen this, monstrous creature, this demon, disappear, what are you thinking? What are you doing?
I mean, clearly there's a way out. If this thing got in and it also got out, I'm going to think really hard about it.
Would you like to do, you know what, actually?
I know that sounds dumb. I'm going to think real hard about leaving this specific area.
That is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. I would like you to make me an intellect roll.
I'm going to use another bene on that.
Okay. Give me, this is, I think at this point, challenge 6, because you're going to add 1 more bene for the knowledge that you learned while in the glade.
+2?
Yep, so +2, unless you want to spend hidden knowledge.
Nah. That's a total of 3.
Oh, buddy.
1 + 2.
Oh, buddy. So, the thing that kind of sticks with you, you're sifting through this kind of new mental baggage, and it's like snapshots, right? You get kind of a sense of that battlefield. You get a sense of those moments where you kind of proved yourself in the line of combat, but you also have this really kind of fond memory with a green-haired woman who is very familiar to you. In fact, she might have been the same woman that you saw in the mosh pit in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And
I thought so.
And so the thing that lingers with you, though, is my name. My name. And then 2 words, my name. And then 3 words, my true name. And at that point, when you hear those 3 words together, you awaken, and you have left the glade. You are being carried down the stairs by a huffing and puffing Maurice, and you are watching this small kind of semi-monochromatic dog kind of rushing ahead of you, looking up, and you realize it's Duncan.
Maurice, how are you carrying me?
I think I was over the shoulder,
Like
over both shoulders, like your head here and then legs here. So not like over the top, but like
not like a fireman carry, but like a
whatever that's called. That one.
Fireman is like over one shoulder.
Right, you're over both shoulders, so like your head's to one side and your legs are to the other, and it's.
So after a second of waking up and a moment, a little bit of disorientation, I'm just gonna throw up a little bit.
And a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
As you get to the kind of like the level where you can safely do that, you realize that there's a soiree in progress. You get to the level of basically kind of like the ground floor, and you are watching all of these various people, and I think probably it's the point where you see somebody who seems to be made of roving masses of beetles that you finally feel the urge to kind of spill.
So now here's an important question.
Mm-hmm.
What do I throw up?
I think that there would be a very artfully, tastefully decorated waste can. It looks like it probably
not where. What?
Ink.
Ooh.
Ink.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You vomit ink. It's gross because I think some of it lands on this very nicely manicured carpet that's at the entry level of the memorial hall.
So Twigg is on their feet.
It's bougie, anyways.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's.
Right.
Hey, don't say that about my campus.
Campus is bourgeois.
Shut up.
So Maurice is kind of, hands floating up above, like no hair to hold back, but okay, looking around. It's people puke at parties, right? This isn't drawing too much attention.
Unfortunately,
Not usually before the reception.
it's
Or like on the nice carpet.
You are at a wine and cheese social equivalent for kind of like this reception.
Mm-hmm.
And it is probably near the start of it, and or actually probably in the middle, I'd say, after the demonstration. And I think there are people that are a little bit toasty, but they're not anywhere near that. And I think some people are starting to kind of stare a little bit.
It's like it's an awards reception for like, different like papers that people have presented and like nominations for things, and like the award for this paper goes to, and then all you hear is Twigg.
It's just like, and it's like, because it's ink, it's like that really splattery, like it sounds like what it is.
It is
just liquid hitting the floor.
Would this actually be unusual? Like, are people staring because they're shocked, or are they staring because this is going to make a great story tomorrow?
Oh, I think it's
Probably
definitely
a bit of both.
Definitely the latter.
Okay.
But at that point, however, I just realized you are a logivore.
Yeah. They hate you.
In a world of knowledge.
We all hate you. Run away.
And it's at that point that several Peresaad members take notice of the ink on the floor, and they begin approaching you.
Oh, I'm gonna book it.
Okay.
Yeah, Maurice.
Book it.
I just thank you.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So Maurice catches eyes with Twigg in that moment that Twigg decides to run, and then turns and looks to face the Peresaad, and then kind of walks forward to intercept. I am so sorry. I'm so cannot handle it. I'm so embarrassed too. How can I help you? I'm so sorry. Just kind of like making a big wall with my body is just going the other direction.
Yeah, I think
I'm just fucking booking it. Just like full force. I don't know. I'm just heading in whatever I think is the direction of the exit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at this point that you are heading towards direction of the exit. Why don't you make me a movement roll? Challenge would be probably 3. It's just to make sure you don't trip over your own feet in your own haste.
Yes. Okay. No, I don't want to switch. Okay. Wait. What do I have there? Fuck it. I'm gonna spend a Bene on that too. Because.
Hey man, what was that? Smoke them if you got them.
Behave yourself. 7 plus 1.
Yeah,
I guess 8.
And I think at this point you bypass what looks like almost a prototypical pit fiend attached to a goetic, and you literally kind of like slam into this thing. Look up. It looks down at you and it says, "Some people just have no manners," and you just jump out.
I take the time to hear that. I then lick it and then run away.
Do you lick the pit demon?
Yes.
All right.
Oh no. Why?
Because manners are manners are manners.
What do you taste?
It tastes a little bit like reminiscent of the red wine, and it burns your tongue a little.
Does he leave any ink behind?
Oh yeah, there's like a big mark
stain.
there's a big mark of ink, and then the on the demon's forearm, and you watch it look as the ink sizzles and disappears from the skin. And
meanwhile, I'm running.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so you have made it outside. Kyrrie, how are you handling the chaos here?
This is a great question because my first question for you, Zach, is are the words still there when Twigg runs out? Does he emerge into kind of like a miasma of different random words?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, boy.
And are those words you can eat?
Oh, here's the
other question.
I think this is a really great question.
I was thinking about this earlier, actually.
Yeah.
So as you run, you're kind of like looking behind you. You're just like, I gave that like asshole the slip. And then you run headlong into a floating miasma of words that are just, and they taste like salt water as soon as you get like a gulp of it. It's kind of like magically created words. It's kind of like, it's not fresh water, so to speak. Yeah.
But they are written, so you would be able to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like diving into a bunch of mashed potatoes, but like salty mashed potatoes.
But that's I was so here for that. I was so here for that, and then you're like over salted mashed potatoes, and I'm just like,
no. You basically walked into a golden corral.
I
walked into the physical manifestation of how
a golden corral,
the parking lot of a golden corral smells.
Folks, we'd like to take this moment to thank our sponsor, Golden Corral.
If that were our sponsor, we would lose it.
Stay tuned. Let me just tell you, if there is our next sponsor next week will be Olive Garden. If there isn't a spell being cast on those infinite breadsticks, I don't know what has been. You book it. You don't know where you're going. You're just going away.
I'm just gonna push through. That was kind of gross. It's kind of like have you ever been bicycling and then like a bug hits you in the mouth?
Oh yeah.
It's the worst. It's really gross.
Here's my follow-up question: is in eating those words, do you understand them? Do you hear what I said to these people?
I think that I probably only got a certain amount because the words are floating kind of individually. Yeah, I didn't, because I kind of picture it as it's forming this really big thing. I feel like I probably ran through, and whatever I actually physically breathed inhaled as I'm running through this.
Somewhat of a word salad, if you will.
Yes. Yes. Quite.
Oh.
No.
Touche.
No, it's not that. There's no salad.
And keep the linguistic puns coming.
Yeah. So I probably caught and
some of it.
your and why and that.
And yeah, exactly. And I think at this point you probably just kind of like want to hide someplace on campus.
I'm definitely going. I'm like basically I want to get far enough away and then immediately hide.
Oh yeah, perfect. Okay. That said, Maurice, you've kind of successfully like run interference with your body on this, and I think though, like Kyrrie, you're still in the hall, aren't you?
Well, so I was trying to find them, which is another question. Did I pass Twigg or did Twigg pass me on the way out?
Absolutely. You passed Twigg. You saw him get just dunked in your words. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. So I imagine Maurice would not be far behind. So I kind of intercept Maurice and then I assume we're going to go get Twigg.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm having trouble understanding the 3D space here. Was there like a corridor which Twigg went down and then ran into the words, and that's separate from the large space where everyone is?
Oh no!
Yeah.
Basically, he would have gone through the anteroom, the antechamber, kind of like the hall where everybody kind of walks in. Yeah. So you probably would have you booked it for the front entrance, I'm guessing.
So
that was for Twigg. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to. Yeah, Twigg would have gone out the way they came in.
Cool. Yeah, Maurice.
Well, I assume the guards weren't just like, all right, have a good party.
Yeah, they're like basically, yeah, we're gonna be talking to you for a minute. Excuse me, do you know who that was and what he was or what they were?
Oh, they were very sick.
I would like you to make a persuasion roll. That was you know what? I kind of want to give it to you, but I can't.
Yeah. They would agree with you. They would think Logavor is demented.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The I have no interaction dispense, so this is just a straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a straight roll, or you can add sortilege.
9.
They're like, yeah, they are sick.
Yeah.
They are I will tell you this, if I see your friend on our campus again, threatening our libraries, huh?
I don't know who that is.
Oh.
Is that Cheese?
Yeah, I think you just.
Didn't you walk into the room with him on your shoulders?
you do.
Yes, he did.
You did basically interactive judo on this guy. just like use the weight of his convictions on him. Just flick him onto the back. Yeah, so I think everybody's kind of like befuddled. You've kind of sown a little bit of confusion here.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to bring a dog, but I have a dog too. Sorry.
Oh, it takes all sorts of vislae to make a casserole. I think you're fine.
I mean, there's a guy with swimming goldfish around his head. I think we're.
Yeah, exactly. Like.
Question:
Mm-hmm.
What's the quality of the cheese? What's magic cheese like?
Magic cheese is basically what you have to consider some of these delicacies in. The world of the actuality, and in particular in Saturnine, is cheese is made with emotion, and food is made with emotions and magic, and kind of like imbued with different energies. And I think that magical cheese, especially in a Vancian campus,
Is it puns? Is it made out of puns?
I was gonna say, is it made with condescension?
Yeah. So
lots of condescension.
It is a overwhelming sense of self-erudition,
yes,
coupled with on the softer cheeses and the Goudas, it's more like puns and also verbal wordplay and witty observations.
Witty repartee cheese.
Yeah, witty repartee.
Oh my god.
And the finest, the oldest, hardest cheese actually tastes like tenure.
Oh,
it tastes like tenure.
So with cheeks flushed, and clothes stained with sweat, and the bits of crumbs of cheese in his beard, Maurice will kind of, knows he has to get out of there and wants to find Twigg. He's going to take a lap around and maybe, have a little drink and then a cracker there and how do you do? And just take a slow lap around before he feels like he can make a surreptitious exit.
Okay.
I literally now just have a vision of like first order advances who are like dreaming of becoming professors one day, like standing around this old cheese, tasting tenure, and just going like, that thing will probably never have. God, it's great to experience it for once in my life.
On my bucket list is insult comedy cheese.
Oh my God! What is that? Just pepper jack?
All right. So, I think at this point, Kyrrie, you've kind of been bypassed by Twigg, and as you turn to meet them in the middle of the quadrangle there, you turn and you're face to face with Alma. And Alma looks down at the
Alinea?
book.
The one woman who lives next to me?
Yeah. And she is looking at you. She looks at the book in your hands. And she looks at you and says, I think I am owed an explanation, and you are coming with me. And we are going to cut there back to Esthain. Esthain, you appear in a place that you recognize as being a more rundown, kind of rougher part of Satyrine. This, off the bat, having entered into the primary entrance to the dimensional portal to Fartown through the primary arch, you understand that this is the Hollows, and this is kind of a rough and tumble place. And you also see that Marlowe is breathing a long kind of sigh. You don't know if it's of relief. You don't know if it's exasperation. But he looks at you meaningfully and he says, "So, did you get the bullet?"
I did, but Marlowe, I really feel like you should tell me what's going on.
And in his hand appears, as if by sleight of hand, a mage coin. And he says, well, first off, this is for your very fine work. And there's more. And he, again, kind of flexes his fingers, and now in his hand appear 2 mage coins. And he says, if you would be willing to take on additional work in a more discreet fashion.
But my current work isn't complete. You said that we were going to work with the bullet. Those were the terms of my agreement.
And we will. Mother Gun will be very happy to have her child back. I mean, it's not all that often that someone who is a very devoted and caring mother loses one of their children only to have them returned. I absolutely want to make sure that we realize this bullet's hopes and dreams, and its unfathomably beautiful design. But you have to trust me.
I'm going to see if I can suss out motive here.
Absolutely. Roll sense motive.
What's the challenge?
That is going to be an 8.
Oh my God. Okay. I have skill in this. I think I'm actually going to spend an interaction then and also a hidden knowledge.
Okay. Yeah,
so
so you have
5.
Yeah, that'll be 5.
God, I hope this is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2.
Okay. And you get nothing but the sensation that this was all a big misunderstanding. That
Okay, so then... Fine.
That the person that interfered with that, basically you get the idea that, maybe he was acting in self-defense. Maybe he really is in the right and that person was in the wrong. And
yeah, I mean, it makes sense, her attempt to... Because I would have seen, like, all the words come out of her mouth, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So that tracks, right? Like, she was trying to obscure herself. She was holding this object. Sure, okay.
Of course it tracks, Esthain.
No, I mean, like, that's my internal monologue. I'm, like, rationalizing to myself.
Yep.
Okay. So I say, look, why don't we talk about future work when this work is completed? I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here.
And the hand that's holding out the 2 mage coins pulls back and again opens, and there are no mage coins there anymore. It's an empty palm, and it rests gently on your shoulder and says, absolutely right. We should definitely focus on the task at hand. Let's go and make that design. I'm sure it'll be quite something. And
all right. And then I take the bullet out, and I don't know. I guess I rub the oil off, maybe on my tunic.
Mm-hmm. And as you rub the oil off, that signature bright luster of the bullet that you saw before begins to poke out and shine out of your hand, and it seems to glow in the darkness of the neighborhood around you.
And I hand it to him.
And having given you the mage coin, he says, great, let's see what we can do. And that's where we're going to end tonight for our 4th episode. So so first off, I want to say thank you to everybody in chat who managed to stick with us through all of the technical difficulties. I think what we're gonna this thing is gonna look like 5 or 6 episodes on Twitch. So what I'm gonna try to do is edit them all together into something more consumable. Again, thanks to everybody for dealing with that. Thank you to my players for their unending patience.
Thank you, sir.
And,
yes, thank you.
Before we end, let's actually go ahead quickly through character summaries. Starting with, let's do Esthain. How did you feel about everything that ensued tonight?
I think that given the failure of that last roll, I probably feel very positively. This job represents for me the first step on a path to a really, really big, larger goal, and I'm feeling very
absolutely
relieved to have found a solution to the problem that I had.
Perfect. I would like you to take 1 joy and award yourself 1 acumen for convincing the bullet to leave Twigg's body. Okay. Speaking of Twigg, how do you feel about what happened tonight?
Ooh, all sorts of fuckery. But I would say reclaiming those memories was huge. That was huge. I think that I think that Twigg overall had a reasonably good experience, despite the fact that they realized that they were fighting with a bullet in their own brain. They recovered memories of theirs. I think that being discovered as a log of war in the Vancian campus is deeply problematic and not conducive to survival.
Yeah, you might have a point there. Yeah, so I will say, for the sake of kind of like that relief of reclaiming your memories, take 1 joy, and take 1 acumen for spitting in the face of death and making fun of the son of a gun. The son of the gun, I should say, actually. And speaking of our local Vances, Kyrrie, how did you feel about tonight?
Yeah, well, I think, Kyrrie was really became quite focused on this book. She probably, she felt she did a lot better than maybe she thought she did when it came to dealing with Geels and helping him. She really had a moment with the book. I think she feels quite bonded with it, not only because she spoke to it, but because now there's clearly people after it. And so, I think she's almost got this kind of like motherly protection going on. Obviously, Kyrrie loves knowledge generally, but here is like something to defend. And so like this book has become like that for her. I also think though that like given the most recent encounter with Esthain and with Marlowe, I think Kyrrie feels like a little bit of an idiot for not having seen that they were on the nefarious side at first and like trying to negotiate with them. So if there was any despair, I think it would be like that she wasn't clever enough to have seen around that and kind of only, it had to be revealed to her that these people were not going to help her.
Absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and take a joy? And I will also award you one acumen for actually befriending Yeleska's grimoire. And Maurice, how'd you do this? How'd you feel this session?
So Maurice, previous session, the goal was to get everybody together. And he did that. And then almost immediately afterward, everyone split up. He is very hurt personally at Gavriel's seeming abandonment in a moment of need after everything they'd shared together. And he's also very worried about her. But his biggest focus was taking care of Twigg, and he found himself powerless and sidelined most of the time. And the only thing he did do was run from danger. He did feel like everything was turning a new leaf when he managed to talk his way out of the guards and feels like, well, maybe we can find each other again, and maybe that's going to be okay. And has no idea that the person he told his name to find him later was actually working against him. So he does not feel bad about that yet. He's feeling pretty good.
So, would you say that the overwhelming feeling for tonight was either joy or despair, kind of taking those things into account?
Despair with like a thin little frosting of joy.
So take one despair, and also I would like you to take one acumen for the quickest, best retort to a set of Peresaad agents I could have hoped for. So, guys, that concludes our session. Once again, I'm very grateful to get a chance to run this for you guys at Anapot Studios, and we are going to be dark for next weekend. Some of us will be, or next episode, I should say. Some of us are going to be traveling over the course of Labor Day. We will be returning the 2 weeks after that. So the next episode will be, the 15th. So the next episode will be in 4 weeks, where we deal with the aftermath of basically all of the shenanigans during the Conclave of Iov. So once again, thank you to our guest, Christopher Green. Chris,
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris, where can folks find you?
I guess this is the part where we find out how little social media I employ. They can find me in the real world. They can find my work. Is it appropriate to talk about that?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I had my first novel come out last month.
Hey.
It is called Us in Pieces. You can probably no longer get a physical copy unless you live in the Midwest, but it is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those big sites.
And Hopper, where can folks find you?
I am on Discord at Hopper, and pretty much on every single other social media platform, though there's a question of whether I'm actually on it. I'm at fail deadly with a 3 instead of an E.
Excellent. And Bill, where can people find you?
I am on Discord at Ghostspike. And actually, I'll take this opportunity to plug Encounter Party. They finished their first season just recently. You can go and listen to all the backlogs. It's like bite-sized, high production value D&D. It's really good. Check it out.
Awesome. And Marissa, where can folks find you?
Yeah, Discord, Critical Kitten, Twitch, critical_kitten, because critical kitten, all one word, was taken, sadly. Instagram, also critical kitten, one word, but that's mostly vintage dresses. So unless you like vintage dresses, maybe not. But if you do, that's Instagram is for that. And then Twitter is Marissa Cords, marissa.cords, just at. And that's my philosophy editor stuff, with occasionally some Invisible Sun thrown in there. So check it out.
Awesome. And I am Zach, otherwise known as @GreatSamino on Twitch, Twitter, and other than that, I would like to plug that in the ensuing absence of the stream for the next 4 weeks, we are actually going to be posting side scenes to our communal Discord. I am just going to be kind of typesetting a bunch of them a little bit later on, and you guys will get a chance to see what everybody's been up to in the intervening time and prior to these events, as well as what maybe Gavriel saw or didn't see during the demonstration. So this has been The Hole in the World, and may the invisible sun shine on you all. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.